Okay, good evening. This is a meeting of the Milton Planning Board. It's February 23rd, 2017. I'm the senior member, very senior member, Alex Whiteside. And we're waiting for Brian Furs to join us, and we will have Cheryl Tugayas with us on the phone. But we've got some people here in person. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Michael Kelly, member.
William Clark, Planning Director.
Julia Getman, clerk.
Tim Serwinski, Assistant Town Planner.
April Lamoureux, member.
All right, we're going to meet again on March 9th, and then again on March 23rd. At some point, we're going to discuss a rule which would be established by the board saying that we will not proceed beyond 10 p.m. without the unanimous consent of the members. But we won't adopt that quite yet. But soon, I hope.
Three of us can
But
vote.
before 10 o'clock tonight, I certainly hope. Okay. How about those minutes? What minutes were they?
The 26th.
And you distributed them. And I commented on them, and everyone else had a chance to comment on them. And shall we approve them? So that's a so moved, and that's a second, Mike?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The minutes are approved. Now, citizens speak. Any citizen who wants to, I see you, Mr. Johanning, any citizen who wants to speak on a matter that does not involve great estates or ice houses should feel free to do so. And Bill, you're up.
Sure.
Sure.
It's ringing.
Hello?
Hi, Cheryl. It's Tim. You're on the air with the planning board.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
We're having citizens speak right now.
Okay, great.
Why don't you introduce yourself to Ms. Tugayas?
I'm Phil Johanning, 23 Parkwood Drive. I'm here to talk about the next situation, let's say, with Thayer Nursery and the special permit. What I'm talking about is the renewal that will occur in about 2 years, I suppose. And what I had sent an email to Alex, but I think the issue is more appropriately brought to the entire board, and that is, how does this work administratively? My suggestion was that the planning office should maintain a file, and that citizens could send information to the file, pro and con, and I'd like to know whether that could be possible. I'd like to make it easy for these hearings to proceed in 2 years, let's say, with all information available, not just recent information, but information over a period of time. And what has happened really has been far more serious for Thayer than for me at this point. But there have been 2 letters from the building commissioner about noncompliance. The town has now taken Thayer to court on a contempt action. In a private nuisance suit, we have gone after Thayer in contempt. And so this is all boiled over into something that I don't think anybody wanted. But I think the letters and the documents that the town presented to Norfolk County Superior Court indicate that they have not been in compliance with what they agreed to do as part of the planning board action. And so I think it's important that we document all this, that we have it in a file, that it's available to the board, so that the board can consider all of the issues from the very beginning up until the time the hearings commence again. Another thing that happened is Thayer began to dig a trench next to Hillside Street, which was just repaved. They did not have a permit to do it. The Public Works came and made them fill in the trench. They took down part of the wall. They had to rebuild the wall. The police were involved. It's just not been good for anybody, but particularly for them. So I'm asking the board in some way to make a determination about how this information will be collected, how it will be maintained, so that we can be ready next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Apologies to everybody for being late. I think we're in citizen speak. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak for citizen speak this evening? Okay, very good.
Cheryl, can you hear that?
I can.
Wonderful.
Right, I guess we're on to new business. Yes. I'm just checking to ask
Do we
where
have
on the
any
agenda.
new business?
I don't think we have any new business. Does anybody have anything? All right.
Oh, I wanted to make a rule that we not go beyond 10 o'clock at night without the unanimous consent of all the members.
Okay. We do it by a vote? Does that
We
have to
can
be
do it by a
unanimous?
vote.
That sounds fine. I'm okay with doing it as a vote.
I so move.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I don't think that was a tough vote, to be honest with you.
Cheryl, what was your vote?
I'm fine with that, but I have a question. Do we need to do a roll call vote once me on the phone?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
So that means you voted yes, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any additional new business? Okay. We're going to open the 7:05 public hearing for the Great Estate Plan Unit Development continued from February 16th. Tim or Bill?
So, what we have that was distributed earlier in the week and was also posted on the website on Tuesday was 3 versions. One of them is a document that combines all of the edits that have been made thus far. Alex's edits from January 12th, Cheryl's edits from January 26th, and edits from the applicant from after the public hearing on February 17th. So you received that. There's another document that is just a clean version of that, so all of those edits just accepted and sort of a clean document. And then the third document is, excuse me, a further red line that takes that second clean document that I just referred to and includes some markups that Alex made on February 21st. So in hard copy in front of you, and Cheryl, unfortunately, you don't have these, but you do have them electronically, you'll have 2 documents, and the header at the top of the red line says, red line draft with 022117 AW edits, incorporating, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The clean version of this document you have in front of you, and it's just that header with clean on top of it. So this red line is, as I said, it has accepted all of the edits that have been previously made and now contains edits that Alex made on February 21st. So, and I have all the other previous documents also, if you want to look at those. I think that's-
That's background noise? Okay, great. Okay. So I think we probably should go to Alex on this one.
Okay. As I say, I took all the comments and that we've discussed at great length and accepted them. I chose to do 58 units rather than 44 units because, of course, you can always reduce 58, but you can't increase 44. So I think that if we submit something to the town meeting, 58 can always be reduced if there's a good reason to do so. But if we submitted 44, that would not be able to be increased. In section 2, I said we want to preserve the existing meadows, and that was an issue that had come up, that how do we make sure that the meadows don't get built on, and section 2 now says they need to be preserved. Section 3, I have something about wetlands. There's apparently a quarter of an acre of wetlands on the site, and I suggest that I left a blank as to how many acres of wetlands can be included. I suggest we put in 2 acres of wetlands.
Less than 5%, so okay.
Number 6, there was a average density. I think we should just use the number 58 because, you know, who knows what might happen. They might find a little more land. We want 58 units. It's perfectly okay to say. 7 is wordsmithing. 9A is wordsmithing. At the end of 9B, I mentioned what I know as the Devon's house. I think it's called the Casey Farmhouse. No. 9C has to do with if the trustees of the Governor Stoughton Trust and this developer get together and determine they can do something with the main building, that's permissible. If they can't get together, there are other opportunities for the provision of affordable housing, the most likely of which is that they're going to acquire 3 duplexes. 3 duplexes, how many units do they need, Tim? 6. So 3 duplexes and bring them entirely up to code and sell the units to deserving people with a preference for town residents and Milton town employees.
Where is that, right? Is that reference later on?
What?
The fact that it's preference is given to residents in town.
Take a look at G.
G. Okay, it's just down
Brian?
further. It's just down
Brian?
further. Okay. I hadn't gotten there
I
yet.
just want to,
Go ahead.
hello, this is Cheryl. I just want to say that it's hard for me to hear Brian. I can hear others well so far, so
Is that better?
much better.
All right.
Well,
Thank you, April.
He's speaking up, and also we moved the phone, so let's, I don't know.
Okay,
All right.
great. Thank you.
Yeah, it's there.
I see it in G. Yep.
The
Thank you.
preference is there.
Yep, I see it. Thank you.
There is a payment in lieu of providing units, and that's basically if the Affordable Housing Trust comes up with a deal that they just can't refuse, the board could, in its discretion, allow them to fund affordable units through the Affordable Housing Trust, but we're not just going to accept a check.
Where is that?
I think we want units.
J.
Jay.
K is, talks about how if the trustees of the Governor Stoughton Trust and the applicant can get together, then all the better. But nothing's guaranteed, and we're not trying to force units to be built there if it doesn't seem possible. Halfway through.
Just a quick point, because I want to add this. There's no obligation in this for the trustees to work with this applicant. So just for the public, there's no, it's if they can come together, there's no obligation for the town to work on the town farmland with them. Okay, sorry, Alex.
Okay, but there is no obligation. Now, on 11A, there's one, we talk about access to the reservation, and that obviously would require DCR's approval, so we put that in. We talk about a walking path along the existing street, which would be Canton Avenue. Where we say in the middle of that paragraph, insofar as permitted hereunder and subject to the approval of the planning board, open land may be used for passive outdoor recreational purposes and for the installation and maintenance of underground utility services insofar as such installation does not require the removal of a significant number of existing trees or otherwise affect significant groves of trees. And I suggest that after the word trees, we put excepting removals which are not reasonably avoidable. You see where that is, Tim?
Accepting removals which are.
Accepting removals which are not reasonably avoidable. I mean, some trees are going to have to get cut down, but we wanted the number to be minimized. If you look at E on that page, 11E, we talk about the existing meadows and the viewscapes, which are to be preserved. 12 is a little wordsmithing. 13B, I talked about large pre-1900 dwellings, which would be the Victorian and the Governor Wolcott House, and then other large dwellings, which would be the Casey Farmhouse. There are a few small buildings. The reason I use the word large is that there are a few small buildings on site which are not going to be preserved.
Alex, do we want to, and Cheryl, this is something that you brought up as well, do we want to limit a percentage or limit the demolition to a percentage of the building? This is something that Cheryl had raised, to preserve a certain, at least make sure that a main portion of the building is
We
maintained.
could say demolition not to exceed 80%?
I think that
20%,
sounds
you mean?
reasonable.
Oh, not to exceed 20%.
Okay. That's what I thought you meant. Okay, thanks, Cheryl.
Where do we want to put
It's
that?
after the word demolition. Demolition of wings, and put it there, not to exceed 20%.
Demolition of wings not to exceed 20%.
Of the total. Of the total?
Existing square footage, yeah.
Or of the existing, not to exceed 20% of the existing building.
Great.
I have that surrounded by commas. Is that okay?
You have what?
I bet demolition of wings, comma, not to exceed 20% of the existing building, comma, and construction of garages, architecture.
Excellent, excellent commas. In 14A4, you can see that I've beefed up the siting and grading plan a little bit. Quite a lot. I'll read it for you, Cheryl, because I did it for you.
Well, I see it. I have it on my computer, and I think it sounds great.
Okay, good. I won't read it to you then. The same is true in 7. We just want to know about the existing conditions and the what they plan to do in detail.
I think that's good, too.
Okay, next page, the site plan design standards. There's one in this is terribly numbered. 14B2, 14B1, which it says that cuts and fills in excess of 3 feet shall be prohibited. And I'm suggesting we change that to cuts and fills in excess of 3 feet be avoided whenever reasonably possible. Yay, nay?
Mike, what do you think about that? Because this was your language.
I thought the 3 feet was good, to be honest with you.
What if we have something as determined by the planning board in its discretion or something like that?
Well, we could say avoided whenever reasonably possible as determined by the planning board?
I think that helps because we determine it then, what's reasonable.
I think that's fine. That gives us, I mean, it's just, we want to give them a little bit of wiggle room because you never know.
Can you repeat that language?
Reasonably possible, cuts and fills in excess of 3 feet shall be avoided. Take out the word prohibited and say avoided whenever reasonably possible as determined by the planning board. And in 5 on that page, the word have is actually, should be has, because it refers to arrangement rather than groupings. You see that, Tim?
It should be,
The word have, it says creates, cross out, and then it says have,
yeah,
but that word have should be has, singular.
yeah, yeah.
On, this is a long section, on 14B6, I mentioned that most of the groupings of these units have to be within the circle of the road. In other words, not on the outside closest to neighbors, but on the inside furthest away from neighbors.
I must admit I had a hard time following exactly what you meant by this sentence, Alex.
Okay, now that you know what I meant, what do you think?
I think the intent is good, but do you think that the language is clear about it?
It's as clear as I could make it, Cheryl.
Of the
Could you maybe say new street so that you know
I
that it's
think
the street that they're building?
I
as
think the
opposed to-
new street would be
That's a
good.
good addition. New street furthest separated from here. That seems. I understand it. I agree. It's difficult to
Right.
convey that, but I
But
understand what
this
you're getting
tape can be a sort of a backup
And-
resource for us.
at. Most is 51%. Is that the definition of most?
Well, we could say at least
I'm just saying-
75%.
Yeah,
How
I mean, I'm
many?
just-
how
I don't
many
know
are-
what the right number is. I'm just asking. I think most is probably 51%, as defined by Webster's, I would guess.
I mean, there are not that many on the outside.
You wanna look at the?
Yeah, I think I calculated previously that it's 25% of the new units, so that wouldn't necessarily count the ones in the existing
That's a good
structures.
point as well. We could say that.
That was in that front portion, so 75% would be the balance, right?
Yeah, it would be. So should we say at least 70% of the groupings?
70 is good. It gives them a little wiggle room.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, at least in place of the word most.
What's the plan show? Okay. Come back to us when we get to public comment. We have a problem there.
At least 70% of the groupings. Shall be, okay, and on the traffic impact study, which we've called for, I say it has to reach at least a mile in all directions from the development site, which I think takes
I'm gonna look it
in,
up, but yeah, let's just see how far it is.
takes in the Canton Avenue and Blue Hill Avenue intersection, as well as the Blue Hill Avenue and, I mean, both of those
They
intersections.
should both be caught.
Blue Hills Parkway is.
What is this? Entrance is around Dollar Street? Or is it, yeah, right? Between Dollar and Milton?
We could,
Yeah, you're within a mile is gonna be
Close.
well beyond
You might get
well beyond Brush Hill Road, and it gets you beyond Bradley for sure. I don't know that it
we
gets
want to
you.
get down to Blue Hills Parkway. We could say a mile and a half,
Why do you wanna get to Blue Hills Parkway?
because we want to have the impact of that intersection
Yeah, you're not gonna,
determined.
it's gonna
Blue Hill
be
Parkway and Canton Ave?
mile and a half to
Oh,
2
that's
miles.
better than, that's almost
Probably
probably
2
2
miles.
miles.
You sure you're not talking about Blue Hill Ave?
No, he's talking
No.
about Blue Hill
Park-
Avenue. That's the Blue Hill Parkway and
Parkway, yeah.
Unquity.
So can we
That's the next major intersection is those two right there. Blue Hill, Brush Hill.
not
just say-
define the distance and leave it up to the planning board to determine the scope of the study?
What?
Well, it says
Can
at
we-
least, right? Yeah.
Oh, at
Techni-
least 1
Technically,
mile.
it says at
Oh, okay,
least.
yeah.
I think you're probably close to. You could be 2.5 miles based. I mean, this is
2.5 miles?
this is Google, and I'm kind of eyeballing it. I don't have a
It is.
scale, but it's probably 2.5
It is.
miles.
From the highway down to that intersection is
Not
probably,
from the highway, even just from Milton,
Yeah.
from Milton Street.
Okay, but reaching at least from the development site to the nearest intersections?
The next
The
nearest
signalized to the nearest
intersections.
signalized
That's fine.
intersections.
we'll call it 40.
From the development site
Street
to
side to intersection's
the,
not- it's still only gonna be a mile. You know, that says a
And
crow
you're
flies,
going
it's
to want to
still-
say signalized intersections
gonna be
to
great.
get what you're intending to do. You're going to want to say signalized intersections on
It's good, yeah.
the road on which the development is on, which is Canton Avenue, because otherwise you'll catch the signal of Bradley Road and
That's what I was
138.
thinking too, yeah.
to the nearest
Or Milton, actually. You'll catch
Right,
Milton
that's what I was
Street.
thinking, yeah. right there.
signalized intersections of the,
There's signalized intersections in each direction from the site.
right, the signalized intersections in each direction. In each direction on the street providing frontage.
That's great. Yep.
You have that, Tim?
No, I was waiting for you to be done.
We had to wait till the language is finalized.
So what should it say?
Okay, but reaching at least from the development site, so we take out the words 1 mile, and then we say to the nearest signalized intersection, I guess it should be plural, the nearest signalized intersections in each direction on the street providing
I'm
frontage.
sorry, can you hold on 1 second?
Jeez, I'm keeping up and I'm writing.
Where are you?
This is a lot of pressure,
Yeah.
gang. but reaching at least from the development site
to the nearest signalized intersections
to the nearest signalized
intersections in each direction
in each direction
on the street providing frontage.
on the street providing frontage.
And then you would take out the 3 words in all directions. And we say a little later on that substantial unmitigated adverse traffic impacts shall not be permissible. In 16, the 3rd line down, the C after the Roman numeral 9 is a capital C, or isn't a capital C, but should be a capital C. And 17, we have the Board of Health replying to us the same as with the subdivision, and the Conservation Commission does their own thing on these things, so we can't force them to do anything. So I simply say that they will review the application in accordance with their usual procedures. Isn't that right, Bill?
Yes.
Okay. Application requirements, just wordsmithing, as are the final 2 things. So that's what I suggest, that we send to the warrant committee with saying that we approve the zoning so long as this is what it says.
So recommending this language to move forward,
Recommending this language in place of the language that's currently on the warrant,
Okay. All right.
currently, or that was submitted to the selectmen. Because I suspect that this language, if we approve it and submit it to the warrant committee, it will make its way into the warrant.
Okay. Well, we're not quite ready for a motion yet, so we need to run the public comment period. Yes, sir? You're part of the public comment period, so you can be number 1.
Good evening, Ned Corcoran. I am counsel for Northland Residential, which is the obvious proponent of that. Very interested bystander for this bylaw proposal. I want to again thank the board for the extensive amount of time and the significant effort that the board has.
Ned, can you speak up or speak into the speaker?
Yes, there's a lot of clatter at the minute with moving chairs. So I just want to thank everybody, particularly the board, for the amount of work that's been done to date. I have, I had, I think, a little bit of bad intel on when this matter was going to be taken up tonight, so Jack Dolly is en route, and we apologize for his not being here. I think I have a couple of minor edits, suggestions. I think not only preserving existing meadows, but lawns. So the Manor House lawn is a significant element. So I would suggest in paragraph 2, we have the word lawns and.
Sorry. Yes, sir?
It's a public meeting that people can't hear.
Okay. We'll ask the applicant to speak up, sir. Thank you.
But if I stand and.
Yeah, maybe try that mic as well.
Why not just put lawns in before existing meadows?
That's my suggestion, is existing lawns and meadows.
Well, existing lawns, comma, meadows. or lawns and, that's right, existing lawns and meadows. But
And
let's
that lang-
consider that done.
Yep, I agree.
And that language would also go in section 11E.
Did you get that, Tim?
I put it up in two.
It's in two, existing lawns and meadows. It's the part that's bolded, unless you unbolded it.
Okay,
And
and
then
11E.
the same thing, shall we consider that done?
I'm fine. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
And then the board was thinking about the number of a ratio of units inside and outside. I think the question is, how does the board want to count the units? But I do have a copy of the site plan. There are, if you just use the loop road, there are 8 buildings, new buildings.
Should use all
Outside.
of them. Should use all of the groupings.
So there would be a total of 8 plus 4 new. One of the new buildings is being at it's Ken Junior's house or the KC farmhouse, so is the board's pleasure to talk about all of the buildings, including the existing buildings?
It's
Or
just the new
new
townhouse, the way it's written.
So new townhouses, units, buildings would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 outside of the loop.
4 could be on that side of the road.
And there are a total of 29 new buildings, so, did I say the number?
I'm sorry. What was the first number?
1, 2, 3,
12, you said?
12.
Well, we go back to the word
Gonna have
most.
to go back to most.
Let's go back to most, Tim. Any problems, people?
And I think at this point, we're otherwise
Okay.
fine. with
Okay.
the draft.
Sorry about the confusion. That was my fault based on a bunch of things that were happening. So, thank you, Mr. Dolly, for his commute. It wasn't a good one today. Okay, let's move on to the rest of the public. Does anyone else wish to speak to this application? Or, excuse me, this article? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Furs and fellow members of the Milton Planning Board, my name is Tucker Smith. My husband, Hale Smith, and I live at 1632 Canton Avenue, a home which abuts the Carberry-Wolcott property. We moved into this home 38 years ago on February 2nd, 1979. As a member of the Milton Shade Tree Advisory Committee, I express concern that nowhere in this proposed bylaw is the word or concept of native used, as in native trees or native landscaping material. Under section 14B, site plan design standards, paragraph or subsection 9, there's a reference to suitable trees and shrubs. And elsewhere, it talks about quality or good design or something. But I would say that native trees are a priority for the Shade Tree Advisory Committee and Milton DPW. Because in general, natives are hardy, adaptable, and better able to support native birds and pollinators and less likely to go rogue, as alien species have done, such as Norway maples, Bradford pears, winged euonymus, or Japanese barberry. The Shade Tree Advisory Committee revised the town's recommended street trees species list a year ago, and it relies heavily on native species. So I request that somewhere native trees be specified for replacements and new installations, if necessary, in collaboration with, the town tree stewards.
We could say in 15B, the planning board may require at its discretion replacement trees. And we can say native whenever possible.
I propose, I'm fine with that. I would also suggest that under 14B9, we add, in consultation with the Shade Tree Advisory Committee after plant material.
That's, and we would have native trees, we could put that in there
That's
also.
fine as well. So suitable native trees, add the word native and then,
Well, I mean, suitable trees, native whenever possible, because I mean.
okay, I see what you're saying, yep, okay.
So,
Tim, I'd probably say either in parentheses, native whenever possible after the word trees. And
what
then
about shrubs?
trees, shrubs, and other plant material, yeah, that's a good point. So in parentheses after material, native whenever possible, and then in consultation with the Shade Tree Advisory Committee.
Right after that parenthetical?
Yeah. And you can add the same under
This-
15, sorry.
Can I just read this out and see if it? So suitable trees, shrubs, and other plant material, native whenever possible,
In parens,
in consultation with the Shade Tree Advisory Committee used for screening or landscaping, shall be of a size, number, and.
Should say will be used. There's actually there's missing words there. Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Just sort of,
Approved
I
in
see what you're saying.
consultation with.
Approved by.
or just say at the end, there shall be consultation with the
That's
Shade
fine.
Tree Advisory Committee.
That's fine.
A separate sentence, Tim.
Oh.
There shall be consultation.
how, can I say the planning board shall consult with
Yes.
the?
Is it the Shade Tree Advisory Committee? What's it?
Yes, it's Milton Shade Tree Advisory Committee.
Okay.
And Tim, we can put the same language into 15B. Before or after for replacement trees, you can say, if again, parentheses, native whenever possible.
And then at the end,
The end, that
there
same
shall be, or the planning board shall consult with the Shade Tree Advisory Committee?
Yeah.
Fine. The second question, it's a process, really. What happens when a tree, especially an important legacy or significant or signature estate tree, is damaged or destroyed in construction? Is there, what's the protection process? I don't know if that needs to
That'll be in the construction management plan,
Oh.
protection of the trees.
And that is monitored by,
We did this most recently with the Woodmere project. They have to put together a plan for protection of the trees, and that's monitored by the people monitoring the permit. And if the tree is damaged, it arguably has to be replaced. So, the mechanism for monitoring and the mechanism for enforcement would be put into the plan and the permit.
does that become, is the monitoring the Conservation Commission?
Probably not. It's probably you, planning department.
It's me.
Okay,
It's you.
there you go.
Okay. Right.
This actually addresses it in
I think we might have lost Cheryl.
15.
She's calling me.
14 and 15,
Hi,
small
Cheryl.
Roman numerals.
Okay.
Hello?
We did.
We did lose
Lost
her.
her.
What did you say?
She hit a redial, or do we
Under
have,
I don't know,
14
why
on
don't
the
you
site
handle
plan,
Yeah.
small a,
you gotta dial
uh,
9. Wait, press the-
small Roman numerals, 14 and
I
15.
got it.
Open land and tree preservation and management plans are going to have to be provided. We
One of
don't
those-
have them?
One of those is a
now.
tree,
They're going to have to do it. Suppose we-
one of
Hello,
those is a list
Tim?
of the existing trees.
Okay, sorry, back.
Got it.
Right. And then, under section 14B, site plan design standards, paragraph or subsection 3, which is pertinent to streets, it says, "Width, construction, and lighting of streets shall be appropriate for their intended use." So who determines, appropriateness? As a resident of Carberry Lane, which was constructed in the 1980s and late 80s and early 90s, I would say, completely inappropriate in scale. I understand that public safety and access are tantamount, but, who determines and enforces the width or scale?
The planning board does that as part of the special permit application.
Okay, all right. And then, so a public hearing or whatever, and a chance to remark to that. Okay,
Correct.
that's fine. Thank you. I thank you for your considerable work, effort, and time.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kirk Connors, representing Kevin Walker, 1776 Canton Avenue. I'll be brief because I know that there are other people who want to speak tonight. I had two issues. One was to pick up our conversation from last week where we discussed what would be the appropriate commencement date of the public record for this process. During the hearing, the chair had suggested proposing an alternate date that better captured what we needed to have included as part of the hearing. I did submit an email to you and town council the following day proposing November 3rd as the date, as the alternative to the January 5th. The board had previously discussed, and the primary reasons for that were to capture the December plan that was submitted by the applicant, upon which this entire bylaw is premised, and also to capture the discussion back and forth between myself and Mr. Whiteside regarding the potential for a conflict of interest, and in current circumstances, it would only be if the acreage were to be changed for the size of the parcel, based on Mr. Whiteside's family ownership of a parcel of some size in rural AA. So I wanted to confirm whether the board had a chance to review that and was amenable to an alternative date, specifically November 3rd, 2016.
Anybody have an opinion?
I think that we're going to have to think about that. But I mean, at some point, the record is going to be the record, but we don't have to determine the record tonight.
In that event, I'll go ahead and resubmit the materials I previously submitted.
I think that that would be the best way to do it, because then you'd be sure that they were in the record.
Okay, I will do that. I will resubmit it this evening and sign it and turn it in before I leave this evening.
And you have permission to do it even after we close the public hearing tonight, as I hope we will.
Yes and yes.
No, I won't need leave to submit later. I brought them with me tonight in
Okay.
case I needed to.
Great, thank you.
The second piece is just that my client was unable to be here tonight. He wanted to be, and he did email me a statement that he just asked me to read
Please do, yes.
for the board. Mr. Chairman and board members, again, this is from Kevin Walker, 1776 Canton Avenue. A few meetings ago, the chairman of this board asked, to paraphrase Mr. Hale Smith, if 40B ends up on the site, would I, the chairman, have done my job? And Mr. Smith responded, no. It is my firm belief if this development has more than 44 units instead of the 58 units proposed by the developer, this board has not done its job. The majority of the support from the neighborhood is for 44 units. I support 44 units, and without the constant and continuous threats from the developer of 40B, there would be no question that the development would not exceed 44 units. Early on in this process last spring, board member Mr. Whiteside directed the developer to go out and get the neighborhood support. To date, this has not happened. By this board supporting 44 units, it will support the neighborhood. It will support the neighborhood and let this developer and others know that this board and the town of Milton cannot be threatened. As a direct abutter, I do not fear a 40B development. If this board can step forward and support 44 units, it has done its job. Please stand behind the neighborhood and support 44 units. Thank you. Kevin Walker.
Okay, thank you. And you'll submit to that to the record as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to the article? Pam.
My name is Christine Seidman. I live at 1350 Canton Ave, which is part of the AA part of our community. I've lived there for 30 years with my husband, John, and we've raised 3 children there. We came to this community because of the incredible beauty of Milton and because of the diversity within Milton. Both of those are very, very important features of a town where I want to live. And I'm very troubled that because a developer chooses to want to put profit over some of those parameters, that the likely outcome is that we will have a minimum of 44 townhouses in a AA property, twice the legal limit at present. Moreover, if the opportunity to buy the equal, if not larger, piece of property comes into play, we will just simply double that. Ergo, we will go from a very rural section of town that is enjoyed throughout our entire town, not just by those who live in that neighborhood, the Blue Hills, the wildlife, the birds, etc. And we will suddenly have 88 townhouses, not to mention the 166 cars, 62, excuse the math, cars that will likely accompany those. I think that the board needs to seriously consider not just what this one development will do, but what this precedent will set, not just for large estates, but for everyone who owns property in that area. Just think how many of those houses, if divided into less than 1 acre units, would change the complete and total character of our town. I would be profoundly disappointed in that, as I will be if we go forward with this as set. There was a reason that the town voted to put 2-acre zoning in that neighborhood, and I've not yet heard a rational reason other than greed by which that should be changed. And I want to register that to the board and let you know that there are many people who value the complete diversity of our economic and our community's ability to come together and enjoy each other. I think you're really going to hamper that by building lots and lots of townhouses in the one area of town where there has been some rural space preserved. Thank you.
Thank you. Just as a point of clarification before you leave, so there is no provision in this that would allow to double the number of units
The other 20 whatever acres
included in this.
will be included in this.
Yeah, so
Thank
the
you. I
maximum we're
apologize.
allowing right now is 58. That's as it's written tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, couldn't get here early enough.
That's okay, no problem.
Got me going.
Got you nervous, huh? Anybody else? Sir.
Dr. Barry Woods, 8 Carberry Lane. I've been at these meetings now for almost 15 months. And I repeatedly heard at the local neighbourhood meetings from Mr. Dawley describing how special this land is. It's part of Upper Canton Avenue and all of the double-acre zoning. I'm reminded of Thomas Morton, the explorer in Milton in 1602. He said, what's on a town seal? The town seal reminds us that God has given us this tranquility. Also closely look at the seal and you see a lot of interaction from the settlers with the local Native Americans. For 10,000 years, Native Americans have cultivated and protected this historic land. 400 years ago, on this month of February in 1617, almost 5,000 Native Americans succumbed to a plague of smallpox. The majority of that group in this area were from the Massachusetts tribe, their home, the Blue Hills, that we know today. 20 generations of Miltonians have enjoyed the beauty and tranquility and bucolic nature of this area. When I think of 4,000 Native Americans buried in the grounds all over the Blue Hills, it's sacred ground. It's important. that our future generations not be deprived of this wonderful preservation. The Milton militia, who actually fought at Bunker Hill with the Dorchester militia, trained and prepared for their response to the aggression of the strangers from abroad. They actually trained on this very land. Paul Revere is a 9-year-old immigrant to Boston. His first encounter with the wilderness of this area was on what we know today as Brush Hill and Canton Avenue, as a 9-year-old traveling with his uncle to their home in Canton. Subsequently, he played a major part in the history of this great nation that I've had the privilege of being a guest of this nation for 45 years in Milton. A young 19-year-old gentleman, Lieutenant Walcott, trained in the very Blue Hills that we know today and was a casualty of the Civil War. He trained with the 2nd Massachusetts Cavalry on this land.
Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to have to ask you to move this along just because we have so many people here.
It has been preserved since 1720 by 2 families as farmland. Now, as the 3rd owner, I asked Mr. Dawley what is so special. Is it because of all these great historical attributes we have in this area? Or why is he intent on challenging and destroying Milton's historical sites with development? Future generations of Milton and Massachusettsans will be deprived of this opportunity. This is our Lexington Green. We respect it, we love it, we're proud of it, but we should not deprive future generations. After all, we're just the wardens of this area for our great-grandchildren. Is this the legacy Mr. Dawley and the Planning Board want to leave to future generations for 30 pieces of silver? I'm reminded of a great poem which reminds me that a fine old woman said, "What did I have?" said the fine old woman. "What did I have?" said she. "I had 46 fields, each one was a jewel, but strangers came and tried to take them from me. I had fine, strong sons and daughters who fought to save my jewels. They fought and they failed, and that was my grief," said she. "And that was my grief," said she. Let us not repeat this and be more grief for Mother Milton and for Mother Nature. There's not one word of archaeology in any of the papers you've spoken about tonight. This is historic property. It is sacred ground. There should be a very aggressive pursuit of archaeological discovery in all 46 acres before anybody turns a shovel up there. We owe it to the previous generations, but we owe it to the future generations. This we should not take lightly. Where I come from, history is very important, but it should also help us determine our future. And if we're going to put 58 townhouses on this property, this morning at 6 o'clock, I clocked a person doing 58 miles per hour passing down by Carberry Lane. The average speed on that highway is 44 to 58 miles per hour. And we're going to increase the density with more traffic, more trash. Basically, people spend 15 to 30 minutes every evening emptying out their ashtrays and their cars while they're waiting in the traffic up Brush Hill Road, up 138, and up Canton Avenue. I thank you for your attention, and I'm very proud to be here representing my neighbourhood, but also representing the town of Milton as a citizen. And I'm very proud that I've had 45 wonderful years in this great country as a guest of your nation. But I feel very strongly about what we have historically, and we should not take it lightly. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else wish to speak to this article? Okay.
Move that we close the hearing.
Let me just check the hallway quickly. Is there anyone in the hallway?
Are we-
Mr. Smith, you can speak, yes. I'd like to speak. Yep, I've got you. Okay, thank you. All right, we have one last speaker.
Good evening, Chairman Furs, members of the Planning Board, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cherwinski. My name is Hale Smith. I live at 1632 Canton Avenue. I've spoken before this board on numerous occasions, so I will try to be brief this evening and leave you with three thoughts and a request. Number one, the idea of locating the 6 affordable units elsewhere in the town was suggested by the developer, not the neighborhood association. The neighborhood has taken no formal position on whether this suggestion is in the best interests of the town. Affordable units built on the Carberry-Wolcott property would be age-restricted. Those built elsewhere would not be. 2, I believe that Mr. Cochran's frequent threats of 40B affordable housing development is posturing for negotiating advantage. Northlands Corporation has presented no evidence to this board that a 44-unit townhouse condominium development favored by the neighborhood would be any less profitable than a 40B development. Furthermore, Mr. Dolly, on several occasions, has stated that 40B developments are not Northland's brand. 3, neighbors who have spoken this evening have indicated a strong preference for a 44-unit development versus 64 units or 58 proposed by Northland. In fact, I know of only one neighbor who, through his attorney, has come before this board in support of the 58 or 64 unit proposal. The Blue Hill Neighborhood Association asks the Planning Board to support its efforts to secure a better outcome for the town, the neighborhood, and the Blue Hill Reservation by limiting the allowed unit density in the Great Estate Plan Unit Development Zoning article to twice the underlying AA zoning, or 44 units. We also request that open space be increased to 70% in keeping with Milton's master plan goal of preserving the town's rural character in areas where it now exists. Thank you for your time, and thank you for considering this request.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask one more time, is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this article? Okay, Mr.
I
Whiteside.
move that we close the hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, is there any discussion from the board at this point?
I would, I'll put a motion on the floor to submit this revised article, the way we've discussed tonight, to the warrant committee as the planning board's approved draft of this zoning. And as I say, that's my motion.
Let's wait for your motion to get seconded, and then we'll have a discussion. Do we have a second? All right, Cheryl has seconded. Is there any discussion? Mr. Whiteside.
I think that what we have here is a chance to do something that actually preserves some open space in Milton on a site that under conventional zoning would be absolutely devastated. absolutely devastated under conventional AA zoning. It would be a series of streets and a lot of 80,000 square foot, or 22 80,000 square foot lots, and there would be nothing left to show what had once been there. And this makes this, it isn't going to be exactly the same, but there are going to be a lot of the existing features that are preserved here, and it's a better development concept than the standard zoning. It simply is. And as I say, if between now and town meeting there's some way to justify moving the density down, I don't think anyone would object to that. But we have to get something to the warrant committee. I think that this is solid zoning. I think it's zoning that is in the best interest of the town, and I think that we should recommend it.
I agree with the premise of your point that it's good zoning. I just feel that the density is, I think a point was made tonight that there was no proof that it was necessary to develop 58 units, or in fact 64 is what they're looking for, but I think the density is a little much.
So my feeling is, all things being equal, I would prefer to see nothing happen here at all. I don't think that's an option. I think I would support this under the thought process of doing the least harm, much like you just described, Alex. If we could get it to a lower unit count, I would be all for it. I don't know. I'm afraid of tipping the scale in favor of something much more dense where we...
I agree with Alex. I agree with April. I think from the beginning I have said that a traditional subdivision would be an outcome which would destroy the character that people love so much about this property. And I think that we have to work at something which is a reasonable compromise that tries to get us to preserving as much as we can. And I think this zoning does that.
Okay, thank you. I agree with everybody else's points here tonight. I think that the likelihood of this project, a project other than this, even if it was just 22 homes, would devastate this landscape. I think we've all seen what's contemplated for Pulte, and it's a clear cut up there, and that's what's required to do a development of that type. You'd have 22 2-acre green lawns with swimming pools up there, and it would just be a completely different environment. I think the fact that this is an age-restricted environment by law, not just by design, brings a lot of additional solid revenue to the town as well that it desperately needs, and there's not going to be any kids associated with the school districts in this project. So I wholeheartedly support this. I think we started out, I think it's 76 units or somewhere around there, and we've slowly made our way down. And I think I look forward to seeing a good project that preserves our views from Canton Avenue. All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Well, opposed?
Any opposed? 1. Okay, so it's 4-1. Thank you. We're going to take 2 minutes if anybody wants to leave as we get ready for the next hearing, which will be the Milton Ice House.
If you're here for Ice House and are interested in following along, I have up here a clean draft of April Lamoureux's rewrite of the zoning article, and I have a red line copy of the applicant's edits to that. So there's about 20 apiece, maybe less, so share. I don't think the baby can read, but if the baby wants some.
Very advanced.
Cheryl, did you hang up?
I'm about to hang up.
Okay, just quickly on our agenda tonight, we have old business for the Master Plan Committee grant discussion. I'm going to recommend that the board table that until March 9th because we will not have a representative of the Master Plan here tonight and because of Mr. Whiteside's new rule. So,
Oh, is that effective immediately?
yes.
Yes, I missed that.
Oh,
would be
please.
relief.
That's when we can't start.
On our last-
All right, thank you, Cheryl. Enjoy the rest of your vacation. Okay, everyone, we're going to open the 7:15 public hearing. We're opening the 7:15 public hearing for Ice House Parkway Plan Unit Development continued from February 16th. And so I'm going to hand this over to April this time.
Yes.
And we have a lot of people who are going to wish to speak tonight. I will make sure that everybody knows from the beginning that you'll all get a chance. If you want a chair, there are some up here. And you can take the two from the end of the table as well. Okay, April, you have the floor.
Well, we need Tim.
Yes, we need Tim.
So maybe what I can do is just quickly review the history of this, because I feel it's a little important to do that. So on January 22nd, we all met. Everyone was here, full quorum. We talked about this issue. Prior to that meeting, we had met many, many times with the landowner, Mr. McKean, and his representative. Are they even here?
They're here outside.
And talked about this issue. On the 26th, we started talking about more tangible things. We scheduled a meeting on the 26th for December 2nd, which was 6 days later, and I couldn't be there. This board met anyways. I did not have an opportunity to weigh in. The February 9th meeting of this board was canceled because of snow. So last week was the first opportunity that I had to weigh in. And I understand in a very concrete way in the discussion of how exactly this warrant article is moving forward. So I know that I missed the discussion on the 2nd, but I feel very strongly that that shouldn't preclude me from having an opportunity to provide comment. So what I did was I asked this board, my colleagues, to give me the opportunity to go back to the drawing board on the draft that Mr. Whiteside had prepared for us and contemplate all of the very, very thoughtful feedback that we had gotten through this process from both people expressing concern and people expressing support. There were a lot of things I didn't feel had made its way through the zoning article in a way that should have, simply because we didn't have an opportunity to talk about it in that way. So what I would ask is, if I can go through the red line version like we just did on the Carberry, do it very quickly.
So, two things.
Yes.
Please tell us what you redlined, because there's been several drafts of this floating around. Secondly, before you go through the red line, can you just start by telling us what your density is, because that's been the biggest issue.
Yes. So the density that I have proposed in this redraft is a maximum footprint of 12,000 square feet of commercial uses and a maximum of 12 housing units. We can go through, as we go through the document, talk about what the footprints are, but an FAR of 25%, 0.25, as opposed to 40.
Okay.
So what I had attempted to do, and hopefully folks in the audience will hear, is I attempted to do what I had been talking about for a long time every time we talked about this, is achieving some sort of opportunity to move forward with a mixed-use project that's neighborhood scale and that minimizes the impact on the parkway. Personally, I would like to see no impact on the parkway. I think it's a beautiful roadway. I think there's a lot of positive attributes there. So that was the lens under which I wrote this. So the draft that I revised, I don't know what draft that was. That was the draft that we had at the last meeting. I think it was based on,
I think it was Ned's last draft.
Yes.
based off your draft?
No.
He had made adjustments?
Yeah, he took our last draft and it was, and said, this is what I want.
Okay.
Your draft as amended by Ned Corcoran.
Right.
Further amended by myself.
Great.
Very similar to what just happened on the Carberry with multiple iterations of comments.
And for the folks reading on their papers, you have a clean version of this, and then the red line version is Mr. Corcoran's further edits to this. So we're going to be going through this red line. You're going to have a clean copy of that.
So the red line is Alex's, let's just say it one more time. The red line is Alex's original draft, redlined by Ned Corcoran, And then I assume redlined in another color.
No, just red line. This red line is just me.
But you accepted the changes that Ned made. You did, April.
That's where you started. You started with what Ned
Yes,
said at the
Yes.
last meeting.
Okay.
The
that's
last time he
I'm trying
said
to
what
get
he
to.
wanted,
That's what I'm trying to get to.
this was it.
Okay.
Okay. So let's go.
Okay, so the purpose of and the red lines that we are discussing will be on the screen for people following along. It didn't seem very fruitful to hand out a triple red line document, but you can see it up there. So the purpose of the development, this is where I had made the adjustments to change the densities and move them down. So to permit development containing up to 12,000 square feet of commercial space in 1 or 2 buildings on the lot. The next section, I removed some language and added it to this next section. So the next section talks about development shall include a food market with a floor area of at least 8,000 square feet, but not more than 10,000 square feet. Again, just down from the various proposals that have been before us. Any development shall include a coffee shop or cafe. And the commercial space may also include one other retail use, including stores, banks, ATM, or office space. But there shall be no more than a combined total of 12,000 square feet for the market, any separate coffee shop, and an additional business use on the site. I expressly prohibited the sale of tobacco and lottery sales. The next paragraph down, the project shall also permit up to 12 residential units in a separate building not to exceed 10,000 square feet. This residential building may contain up to 2,000 square feet of business uses. Again, that's within the 12,000 commercial square, maximum 12,000 commercial square feet on the entire site. So if the residential unit included 2,000 square feet of commercial, that would mean the other building could only include 10,000 square feet of commercial. This limits the project to studios, 1 bedroom and 1.5 bedroom. It does away with the 2-bedroom references. The next paragraph says at least 10% of the development containing 10 or 12 units shall be restricted to lower moderate income households. And if 10 units are not constructed, there shall be a payment to the Affordable Housing Trust as opposed to may be a payment to the Affordable Housing Trust. The floor area ratio, again, was adjusted down from 40% to 25%. The market building footprint may not exceed 12,000 square feet, and the residential building footprint may not exceed 6,000 square feet, and no building shall be more than 2.5 stories tall. The setbacks, in section 3, I adjusted parking areas shall be set back at least 25 feet from any side lot, provided the parking setback from the lot line may be 10 feet. If the lot does not contain a dwelling, and what I'm hoping we can do is adjust this language because it says if such side lot line does not contain a dwelling, and no side lot line would contain a dwelling. It should be side lot, I think.
With the lot on the side lot line.
So
Yeah,
you're saying
the
there's
lot-
there's not a dwelling on the line? Is that what?
On the lot
From any-
on the line.
From any, how would we adjust this appropriate? From
Where is it?
any side, it's a section 3 setbacks, the second paragraph. Parking areas shall be set back at least 25 feet from any side
Is the floor
lot
area-
line,
Is that the footprint?
provided the parking setback from a side lot
Just take
line
out
may
the
be
word
10
line.
feet.
Second floor.
Just take out the word line in both cases. So 25 feet from any side lot, provided the
Perfect.
parking.
Can we do
area
that?
is just the
Remove the word
footprint.
lot? Okay.
It's not the first.
Line, not the word lot.
Line.
Building is 6,000 square foot footprint.
Okay.
Then you use 6,000 there.
So then we go forward a couple of paragraphs.
So you use 12,000 if there's a person second.
The rear lot line should be landscaped so that the view of the development from that area shall be obscured. To make this a little more clear, not partially, not somewhat, but obscured. To provide a visual, light, and noise buffer from any conservation area. Under building design, I've added in multiple areas in this in this document reference to a historic parkway as opposed to just a parkway, because I think it's important to note the historic context. At the end of that paragraph, first paragraph in section 4, overall height of the market building above grade shall not exceed 25 feet and shall not exceed 1.5 floors. And there's just a little bit of wordsmithing to steal Alex's description. The last paragraph here talks about the planning board may require the applicant to participate in a materials conference to ensure that materials used for the development match the character of the historic parkway setting. In general business building standards, the very last section E, subsection E. We talk about obscuring equipment so that it's not visible from abutting properties or from the parkway or the nearby conservation areas. Section 6 is site design standards. We added the language, in keeping with the Blue Hills Parkway's National Register of Historic Site status and the parkway's significance as a purposefully designed gateway to the Blue Hills Reservation, the site shall be planned and designed as to preserve the character of the parkway. Under subsection A, we made some adjustments to the open space and removed the reference to public access to the conservation area and any other obstructions to the conservation area. That should be within the purview of the Conservation Commission. We also added open space along the side or rear lot lines may include a limited number of picnic tables for public use. However, picnic tables are not permitted in the open space along the lot line containing a residential dwelling. This too should be removed, the word line. In the open space along the lot containing a residential dwelling or along the parkway. And we added subsection E. The site shall be designed in a way that mitigates any existing conditions on the site that have created adverse impacts onto any conservation land as approved by the Conservation Commission.
Yes, sir.
For parking, change this in a bit that says parking shall be primarily located in the rear of the market building so that it's obscured from view from the parkway and looks much the same as it does today. Unless the board determines that the applicant has offered a superior design alternative that is even more consistent with the character of the parkway, which I don't know how that could be if you were looking at parking, but I wanted to leave the opportunity open. That would also require improved open space preservation, improved protections for nearby conservation areas, and improved traffic flow for pedestrians and bikes. The last line of this parking statement, this clarifies, sorry, I'm on the wrong page here. This clarifies the parking requirements because a few people have come in and said there was no accommodations for guests of the residential units. So this says 1 space for every 2 units shall be reserved for guests of the residential building. We removed the statement, or I did, that said there may be 2 lanes at the outgoing approach to the parkway for left and right turns. That is not within our jurisdiction to determine whether or not there are any changes to the parkway. It would be my preference that there are no changes to the parkway, physical changes. So that's why I removed this. We added in a future paragraph, parking areas should not be tracts of unrelieved asphalt, but will contain landscaped areas sufficient to make those areas visually harmonious with surroundings. And resident or customer parking on Blue Hills Parkway adjacent to the development will be prohibited unless otherwise directed by the state. Again, the DCR owns this roadway, so if the DCR says there's going to be parking there, then there's going to be parking there, but it seemed important to note that that was not the intention of the bylaw. Fences, changed the fence provision to allow, to expressly say that this would create a visual and noise buffer. Again, took out the section about brakes so that we're not encouraging greater access to the conservation area than exists today. Number 9, signs. Took out some specificity there because the sign committee has the right to make these decisions, and that should be within their jurisdiction, but we changed the dimensions of the sign back to what I think they were originally intended to be, which is 4 by 5 feet. And added a requirement that a placard demarking the historic significance of the former ice house on the site shall be erected in a prominent location at the direction of the Historic Commission. Hours of operation were changed from 8 to 9 down to 8 to 8. We made some big changes to the traffic safety section. The intention here was, again, to remove any reference whatsoever to changes in the parkway, changes in the physical infrastructure of the parkway. What I realize is the very last sentence still talks about the physical changes to the parkway, and I would like to just strike that whole last sentence that starts with the design of any proposed changes. In the interim, the paragraph has added language that talks about the applicant or an applicant for a special permit under this bylaw would be required to demonstrate maximum compatibility with the design and appearance of the historic parkway and demonstrate improvements to pedestrian and bicycle safety at the development site and in the surrounding neighborhood. And it expressly states that any proposed development shall not cause significant adverse traffic impacts on Blue Hills Parkway, surrounding roadways, or nearby intersections. Traffic has been one of the biggest topics of discussion in these meetings. It's one of the greatest concerns that I have. It goes on to talk about, again, expressly requiring a traffic study that demonstrates safe turning movements from both the north and the south in both directions on the parkway. Gives us the ability to establish conditions that are appropriate to achieve maximum safety of vehicular, bicycle, and pedestrian traffic and improve traffic conditions on the parkway, and requires a safe truck route for both construction and thereafter. In the next section, application section, it further describes that a traffic study is required as part of the application process. A comprehensive assessment of potential impacts on Blue Hills Parkway, nearby intersections, and any additional roadways or intersections in the vicinity of the proposed development site that may experience adverse impact over existing conditions as a result of the development as deemed appropriate by the board. This wasn't the 1 mile or 1.5 mile or 2 mile radius wasn't specified because I think the board should have the flexibility to say how many intersections, how many cross streets, how many things we want to see studied. The traffic studies shall consider vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle traffic. Once it's completed, the town, again, this is something that we actually discussed, the town will conduct an independent third-party review of the traffic study at the applicant's expense. On to issuance and modification. It says that the Parkway PUD, that a special permit shall be granted if the requirements have been met of this subsection and others, and that the development will serve one or more public needs and be of public benefit without any substantial adverse impacts. I think the reference to adverse impacts is that we have the discretion to decide what we believe are adverse impacts. We add here the Department of Conservation and Recreation, because they are the owners of the roadway and a direct abutter. And then the last most significant piece is neighborhood involvement, which is particularly important in this area. It's important in every project, but in this one, there's been a lot of neighborhood engagement to date on all sides of this issue, so it seemed important to further enforce that idea. It requires the recording of neighborhood concerns at a public meeting, the notice of all abutters within 300 feet of the site, publication of the meeting, It requires the applicant to not only record the concerns, but then address them during the public hearing process, and that the planning board shall consider all of these concerns during our deliberation. So these were my suggestions. The balance I was trying to strike was between the number of people that, or the volume of people that we've seen very much support the concept of this idea, and also taking further consideration of the very, very good comments that we've received from a number of people who have sat in this room with us night after night after night for hours and hours and hours. And I'd really be interested in hearing what the public has to say.
Okay, so here's what I would propose we do. I'm gonna give Mike and Alex a chance to respond quickly. I'm gonna have the McKean or their representative speak quickly. Then we're gonna go to I'm going to address the litany of public comment we have gotten through email submission and letters, and then we're going to turn to the public, and then we'll see where we are. So I'll look to Mike and Alex quickly if you have any immediate comments.
I just, I did a little investigation myself today, and I'm not always trying to hang this site's future on some other site, but to get a relative scale, the way I look at things, I have to have some kind of relative comparison. And we've been continuously talking about Milton Marketplace, and for the longest time I thought I understood that Milton Marketplace was on 2 acres. And through, like I say, a little investigation, I find that Milton Marketplace is on 3.2 acres. And they have over 220 parking spaces access. So it's the scale that you have come up with, it starts to get into a realm which might be something that might fit in there. But the scale that's proposed by the proponent is still relatively the scale of the Milton Marketplace. And it just, and keep in mind when I say the Milton Marketplace on 3.2 acres versus 2 acres, it's bordered by a highway. Mm-hmm. It's in a commercial zone. Major arteries, it's not conservation land, historic parkway, and residential. Mm-hmm. It's not only is it zone commercial, but it has significantly more area to work with. So I think it's just the concept of what could go there is not a bad concept, but the scale that's proposed to date, I think, is just still out of scale for the site. And I thought at our last meeting, the proponent had talked about if just bringing down the scale is what was necessary, they could look at that. And what I see here is it came back with virtually the same scale.
So the public hasn't had to hear the response from the...
The only thing I see that changed the dimension is instead of saying from a 10,000 to a 14,000 square foot market, they want to go from an 8,000 to a 14,000 square foot. In my mind, the lower end is irrelevant. It's the maximum that hasn't changed, so it's changing the lower end to something less is irrelevant. You could say 0 to 14,000 square feet, and that's pointless.
It's not pointless in the sense that it probably restricts a convenience store.
I'm sorry?
It would probably restrict a convenience store. So I would put that out to you.
Oh, okay,
there's
I guess. See what
probably
you
a
get.
reasonable reason to have a minimum.
Well, yeah, but beyond the
I hear what you're saying completely, and I agree with you.
No,
I'm
no,
just suggesting you don't want to say 3,000
No,
square feet, because now
yeah,
you've
I was exaggerating, I think, to make a point, but I
would
certainly understand what you're saying. But there's also allowance for 2,000 square foot of commercial space, which in my mind, people got to understand, Dunkin' Donuts, some kind of convenience store, I don't know what you could put in there. You could put in pretty much anything, I suppose. I don't know.
Well, you wouldn't want to put a convenience store in next to a market.
I don't know. Stranger things have happened.
The market would let you do that. But in any case, Dunkin' Donuts certainly would qualify as a cafe.
Yeah.
So,
just to that one point on the convenience store, that's why I put in no lottery and no tobacco, because I think it would be hard for a convenience store to operate without those two.
I'm grasping, but I'm just...
No, but I understand.
There's 2,000 square
Totally
feet.
understand.
You
Yeah.
could do some things, I don't know.
Yep.
Mr. Whiteside.
Well, I think that April has done a good job of threading the needle here.
Wow.
And
high praise.
The prior zoning, the big thing that I didn't like was the shoebox. And the shoebox is your your rectangular CVS-type building with a market on the first floor and then a bunch of units on the second floor, plunked down with a big parking lot, and and that's it. That's basically what you get. We want some visual interest. We want something that's appropriate architecturally. We want something that people pass by and they get drawn in because it looks nice, not because it's got a neon sign saying whatever.
7-Eleven.
So I think that avoiding that was absolutely critical for me because it just would be wrong, wrong, wrong. I think that the 12,000, I think that having these 12 units is going to make the commercial development possible. And we've heard that you couldn't do a commercial development here. It's just not possible to do a commercial development if you don't have the money coming in from residential as well. So providing for a straight market, just we've been told, and the developer has made it clear, not the developer, the owner, has made it clear that the residential is basically going to make the commercial possible here. And I think that the residential is reasonable. It's going to be in a separate building, which should be interesting. And with all the protections here, I think that we have the potential for a really nice development. And so, as I say, I think that April has done a great job.
Thank you.
I'm not going to say much because I have to save my voice for the letters, but I am going to say that just a quick point on the residential. I love that the residential is limited to studio, 1 and 1.5 bedrooms. We've heard over and over and over again for the last several years during the master plan process that we needed a variety of housing types, and I think this provides exactly that. This provides housing for young people, it provides people for retired people, it provides housing for single people, if young, older couples. It really will fit the gamut between studio and 1+ bedrooms, but it will not necessarily flood our schools, and it will provide a type of housing that we don't have today. So I was very encouraged to see that limitation put into the zoning. I'm going to look to Mr. McKean and Mr. Corcoran now, and then we'll go to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and thank you all for your effort to try to thread the needle. Unfortunately, the thread hasn't gotten through the needle. And I'm very interested to hear from the public on the more dense proposal, because we're at 16,000 square feet. We're at 12 units above the market.
Can you speak to the mic? We can't hear you back here.
The mic doesn't.
So just maybe speak up, yeah.
So we are at 16,000 square feet. We're in conversations with a market at 12,500 square feet. We're in conversations with a specialty food shop, about 1,500 square feet, and we're in conversations with several banks. So that's sort of the tenant mix that we're looking at. So that's 16,000 square feet. 12 units of housing is really responsive to the request of some for housing on the site. I could care less, the McCains could care less if we have housing here, but there is an insistence among some supporters that there be housing with some affordability. And that's responsive to that. And they're town meeting members, and I don't want to lose their vote. Ultimately, you're town meeting members, I'm a town meeting member, there are other town meeting members here. You're going to be voting on a choice. A market development that is larger than some people want, that is more impactful than some people want, that's going to introduce more traffic than some people want, or an alternative. Tom Callahan has spoken eloquently to that. A housing development that will be 4 or 5 times larger than the buildings that would be developed under the zoning bylaw that we've proposed, that would have more significant traffic and other impacts on the property, on the conservation land, and on the Parkway. We're just going to vote door number 1 or door number 2. If you're a town meeting member and you're voting door number 2, you need to tell the people why that was a better alternative than door number 1. People want the market. We're going to get the market. We have a development that comes without children. It is a significant net positive to the town's tax collection. A housing development will overwhelm the town's budget and introduce a lot of new kids to the schools. This project is absolutely perfect for a 40B development. It's a mile to the train station by foot. It is walking distance to all 13 grades in the Milton Public Schools, if you include kindergarten. That's the alternative. That will have a negative impact on our budget. We will spend the first 3 or 4 nights of town meeting debating whether or not to support an override this year. That is going to be a brutal 3 or 4 nights at town meeting. This will come up on Monday, May 8th or Monday, May 9th, following that debate. And we're either going to vote for a project that's going to have a significant negative impact on the town's budget, or a project that's going to have a significant positive impact on the town's budget, either one of which will have more impact, I get it, more impact than we'd all like to see. We'd like to see a smaller building. We'd like to see less traffic. We'd like to see less impact on the Parkway. We're not going to get it. We're going to get impact. We're going to get scale. We're going to get traffic. We're going to get changes to the Parkway, and we're going to get development that's going to have to work itself out with the Conservation Commission. It's going to have to provide access to the conservation land and connections to the neighborhoods on the other side. That's what most people have said that they want. I agree. Not everybody wants to support the scale that we're talking about. But that's the scale that needs to happen to make the economics of this development work. And if the economics don't work, we're not going in that direction. It's simple. So we've put forward a plan, 16,000 square feet, a small number of units on top, and we go from there. When you compare it to the Fruit Center market, same size building. Fruit Center is the market, CVS, the Plate, and 4 other retail facilities on the second floor, all of which draw traffic. Probably more parking spaces over there because there's a whole lot of parking spaces over there that are owned by the town or an easement to the town that provide parking for the rest of East Milton. That site doesn't just park what happens over there. It parks for a lot of East Milton. I've lived in Milton for 25 years. I do all the cooking. And I buy all the food at the East Milton Market. I stop there 6 or 7 days a week. I have never, once, never had trouble finding a parking space. Never. I've never had problem getting in and getting out. I'm there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 5:30, 6:30, 7 o'clock. I'm there on Sunday afternoons after St. Agatha Church lets out. I'm here at all different times. I've never had problems parking. It's a tough choice. I get it. We're trying to thread the needle with a thick rope. All the strands are having trouble coming together. That's zoning in Milton. In Milton, we like to zone the site plan. We like to have a developer sitting in front of us that says, this is what I'm going to build, this is what it's going to look like, these are the impacts, and they spend a lot of time designing a site plan, and we get to something that we then negotiate the bylaw, and that's what gets presented. Well, we don't have it in this case. Okay, we spent a lot of money a year ago coming up with site plans for one proposed development. Didn't have the housing, it was a little less dense. Town meeting said, send it back. You haven't done enough homework, send it back. So we spent the year. I've had a lot of meetings at the library, I've had a lot of meetings with neighbors, a lot of communication with people, and this is what we've come up with. It's a little more dense, it's got a little more impact, but it's what we can do. And if that's what you want, let us know. If you don't, You get door number 2. There is no door number 3. There's no one out there with a lot of money who's going to pay the McKeans to buy the property and build a park, which is what everybody would really like, because they'd like to preserve the presence of the parkway. They'd like to clean up the buildings that are there now. They'd like to have a nice little introduction to the parkland in the back. Wouldn't that be nice? Well, that costs a lot of money. We don't have the CPA here in Milton. That's the consumer. Tom, you just passed it in Boston. What is it? It's the Community Preservation Act. We don't have a process to raise money to buy land for open space and to do other things like that. So we don't have the capacity to do that. If somebody's got the money, wants to buy it, build a park, great. But that's what we have. If we can't get the yes, if the board can't support what we're asking you to do, after hearing everybody tonight, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you for your effort. I'll get 200 signatures. We'll call a special town meeting within the annual. It will be either May 8th or May 9th. And we'll have the debate on the bylaw that we've developed. I appreciate your effort. You guys have worked hard. April, my new changes accept almost all of your other components. I think there's a lot of thought that went into them, and I think it's great. I can't live with it. We're not going to live with the density. So there we are. I'm anxious to hear from people, but that's where we are, and that's where we're going to be.
Ned. All right, I have a lot of letters. I can't read them all and meet Alex's rule, thank goodness. So I'm going to go through them very quickly.
Brian, do you think it might be a better idea to hear from people first? No?
No.
Okay.
So I'm going to do the letters quickly, and then we will go through the public comment. I'm not going to read them all, like I said. I'm going to basically give very quickly the tone of it and who said it, and we'll we'll go to the public. And these will all be submitted in full to the record if anybody wants to read them. The first letter is from Maggie Oldfield, 237 Hillside Street, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 9. Essentially, as you guys know, I've been following the crafting of this bylaw very closely. As I have stated previously, I am not against the rezoning of the McKean property to commercial. However, I am against the inconsistencies that seem to exist when the board crafts the zoning bylaws. I'm not going to go into those inconsistencies. She asks specific questions. If there is an appeal, will the town of Milton have to demonstrate that this zoning does not constitute spot zoning? Number 2, does each new business have to apply for their own special permit, or is this a blanket approval for all businesses that go into this development? Number 3, is the special permit transferable to another business if the original business leaves the site? Number 4, I don't see any term limits in this zoning. Number 5, because the site is located in a residential district, should only independents be allowed to operate here? Number 6, why is the language not limiting the activity above a certain level? Number 7, will 7 days a week be the new standard for all retail business? That was number 7. Number 8, why aren't there any designated loading and unloading zones? Number 9, section on plans, rules, and specifications seems to be missing from this zoning. And number 10, since when is it the responsibility of the planning board to run financials? Okay, that was one letter. Number 2, this is from Timothy Carew. I apologize in advance for any mispronunciations. Timothy Carew, 14 Grove Street in Milton, Mass. He says, I would like to express my concerns regarding the Ice House property zoning and development on Blue Hills Parkway. I am not able to attend this evening's meeting. I'm going to again paraphrase, I chose to move to Milton and buy a home in 2008 because of the unique qualities that Milton has to offer: a small town feel, lots of trees, quietude, proximity to the Blue Hills Reservation, and proximity to Boston. I have heard and read of plans to develop a market, bank, and residential site on the Ice House property. Why would the town change the zoning that has made Milton such a beautiful place with consistently rising home values? To change the zoning on this property would open us up to increased traffic down Warren Avenue, increased noise from Blue Hills Parkway, and a change in the historic purpose of the parkway. It would also set a precedent regarding the non-conforming properties in town. Deborah Felton, I don't have her address. I'm not pleased with the prospect of the commercial development called the Ice House. Blue Hills Parkway is a beautiful roadway with room for biking and walking safely. Former Senator Brian Joyce advocated and received funding to approve 3 sections of the parkway. With the commercial development and potential entrance directly off the parkway into the development, the traffic will increase and pose a risk to bikers and walkers. I would much rather see the town participate in a friendly 40B process. Linda Palmer, 79 Blue Hills Terrace. I know I've made my opinion known, but I want to repeat it at this critical juncture. The current proposal for the so-called Ice House property is not appropriate for the site. While the initial proposal was for a modest commercial development, the current proposal is too large for a site that is both adjacent to a sensitive environmental area and borders a historic parkway. Linda Watson, 75 Blue Hills Parkway. I'm writing of my concern about the proposed plan to change the zoning of the Ice House property on Blue Hills Parkway from residential to commercial zoning and the proposed development of a market, bank, cafe, and residential units as well as parking. As a lifelong resident of Milton and a resident of Blue Hills Parkway for the past 28 years, I am very concerned about this proposed change. The neighborhood does not need another market, as some would suggest. Okay, going next to Christian Amaral. No address given. As a Milton resident, I write in support of the zoning changes needed to enable the construction of a market, small bank, and approximately 12 residential units at 487 Blue Hills Parkway. I think it is important that Milton finds a way to diversify its tax base while balancing the traffic concerns of local residents. Next is from Heather Baker at 1080 Hillside Street. I'm writing to express my support for the Ice House project. The Ice House project as planned fits well within this community. I understand that people will always object to new commercial development. That is how this town has managed to remain a residential community when so many other towns have not. But the Ice House project should be approved. We do need another local market in that area. Just for the record, I do not support the Ice House because I fear further residential development that will bring more low-income housing. I would love to have more low-income housing units in Milton. Ruth Baltopoulos, I'm writing in support of the multi-use marketplace project being proposed on Blue Hills Parkway on the McKean property. There is overwhelming support for this idea as a wonderful benefit to the west side of town. This is from Alfred Benjamin. He says, he's an enthusiastic supporter of the Ice House project. This goes for me and my wife, Alfred Benjamin, Rabbi Congregation of Beth Shalom, and Allison Mole, Chair Milton Cultural Council. I believe that was written on behalf of the individuals, just to clarify. Jeffrey Bradley and Amy Norton of 57 St. Mary's Road. My wife, Amy Norton, and I have been residents of Milton since 1988 and live on St. Mary's Road with our family. We are now certain that the proposal the McKeans have presented would be an economic, environmental, and community asset to the neighborhood and town. We enthusiastically support it and encourage you to vote in favor. We base this on the potential improvement to access to Pope's Pond, the potential for commercial space that would enhance the neighborhood and earn the town tax revenue, and the real possibility that if not passed, the owners would be able to turn the property into a housing development. Next is Margaret Carrolls from 19 Gibbons Street. I urge you to support the development of the McKean's property as a mixed-use development. I hope that my comments, she addresses that the proposed development meets many of the desires that the master plan highlighted, amenities where there are not any, thoughtfully increasing the commercial tax base, increasing the town's stock of affordable housing, and every little bit counts. This is from Denise Quealy from 64 Old Farm Road. I'm writing on behalf of my family and my parents, John and Mary Caruso, who just became Milton residents. We all live within 1 mile of the Ice House. They're away on vacation, and they are not in favor of 60 to 80 unit development on this property. The 60-80 units use of that space is detrimental because it is not prudent use of additional commercial tax base that will help us alleviate burden on our property taxes, and the schools are bursting at the seams and cannot accommodate 60 to 80 families moving into town. This is from Camilla Chaporo from Chilton Park in Milton, resident in Precinct 4, and I'm writing to express my strong support for the development of the Ice House property that includes a market, bank, and coffee shop. Paul Cicchello, 19 Chilton Park, Milton, Mass. I'm writing in support of the Ice House development. I live relatively close by and would be fine with increased traffic for the proposed market. I'd appreciate the increased tax base. Next one is from Ann Chamber. I would like to voice my strong support for the Ice House project. Time and again, I have seen many developments that would provide much needed tax relief and amenities vetoed in this town. I urge you to support this development. Dr. and Mrs. John Ferrante from 76 Robbins Street. We are in full support of the proposed Ice House development for the positives to our side of town. We have heard all the opposing arguments and find them baseless and irrelevant. We are desperately they're in support. Emily Goldman, 113 Thatcher Street. I am writing to express my strong support for this project, which I believe would be fantastic and a much-needed addition to our neighborhood. Maureen Little, also in support of the project. Kate Middleton is, as you notice, I'm getting a little quicker here. She is urging us to accept a mixed-use site for the Ice House development. Anne Marie Fag, sorry, that's where it came from, my mistake. This is from Deborah Milbauer of 16 Winthrop Street. I'm writing to express my support of the Ice House development if done to scale and if the pond area is not significantly disturbed. I am most interested in a small coffee shop and a greengrocer to scale. A few upstairs offices sound really nice. I like the idea of mixed use, housing and retail, if it's done to scale, meaning small sizes appropriate for the land and not too many units. Although I'm fine with no housing at all, either way is fine with me. Melissa Seafried from 30 Harold Street. Regarding the Ice House proposal, I am a firm supporter of option 1. I'm not sure how 60 to 80 residential units would cause any less pollution, traffic, and environmental disruption than a smaller market and 12 units. This one is Jacqueline Slavic. A right to express my unequivocal and enthusiastic support for the proposed marketplace on the Blue Hill Parkway property known as the Ice House. The next one is Mark Wiesenhahn. I've realized there is vocal opposition to this measure, but also believe and see the tremendous support the initiative has. Ultimately, we believe this kind of development enriches our town and community for us and our kids, hoping they stay close. Next one is Adam Winkler from 222 Robin Street. He believes this, he voices his support for this development project and believes the addition will only add value to the community. Next one is Christopher Zian from 62 Avalon Road. He's lending his support to the mixed-use development project for the Ice House property. The next one is from Kevin Hardy. No address given. He is in support of the proposed zoning changes that would allow for a small-scaled commercial development at the Ice House property. He wants to make one final plea in support of the planning board for a sensible plan that meets the needs of the community. Linda Casey from 185 Elliott Street. I would like to voice my support for rezoning for the Ice House at Pope's Pond. Excellent use of the parcel and provide much-needed tax revenue to town. Michael and Carrie Brown. No address given. This is really the best use of this property. It evidences a plan for the future instead of focusing on the past. Lynn Zian from 62 Avalon Road. I'm writing to express my support for the Ice House development. I feel the plan for a mixed-use property is needed in this part of town and would help to bring revenue and positive attention to a sometimes forgotten area of Milton. Maureen Butler, 300 Lyman Road. I express my full support to allow the zoning to allow the Ice House development to proceed. I think this would be a fabulous addition to our town. And Suzanne Owens, Precinct 1, on Crown Street. We'd love to have this mixed-use project in our neighborhood, and the town could certainly use the tax help. Believe it or not, I have a few more, folks. Sorry. Almost done, though. Amy Flanagan is writing, to support the project, it's a wonderful boost to our tax base. Maureen Butler from 300 Lyman Road, I think I just read that one. Jacqueline Diani, we are in full favor of the approving the rezoning to allow for the Ice House project. Ice House development, this is from, I cannot say, I'm sorry, IMGE Serrano Glue, sorry about that pronunciation, 2 Elliott Circle. I'm writing today to let you know of my support for the proposed development. I would look for a development that will be beneficial to the town. Sharon Donnellan writes, she lives on Hudson Street. She supports the project. I am happy to have some commercial space in the neighborhood, and I am not afraid of what it might do to traffic. This is from Denise Quealy at 64 Old Farm Road. She's writing, we already read that one. That's a duplicate.
Parents are on vacation.
Her parents are on, just moved here actually. Rebecca Stover from 190 Edge Hill Road. She is in full support of the Ice House project. Adam Gilmore 22 Valley Road, he supports the project. Keith Schleicher, he's submitting a petition, so that will be in the record. And it has 591 signatures. Brian Tretinick at 69 Maryland Road. He supports the project because of the need for proximate amenities. Jared Barker, 190 Edge Hill Road. I support the Ice House proposal. Nice and short. Ken Prendergast. I would like to say that I am for the Ice House project. Christina Lang. I do not understand all the ins and outs, but I do think that this town could benefit from more commercial revenue. I am in support of the project. And I believe, no, sorry, I thought it was the last one. Karen Vivieros. I welcome the concept of the development of the Ice House with the proposed small store restaurant space. Supporting, this is Michelle Cardoza. I'm writing to express my support for mixed-use development because of tax revenue. And finally, Kristen McCardle, no address given. She would love to see the Ice House built. We need commercial business on this side of town. Thank you for your patience in doing that. I hoped to bring both the positives and the negatives and the references to the scale as much as possible. Again, the board has received all of these letters and hopefully read most of them, if not all of them, and they will all be in the record, as well as the, I just said we got a petition that was signed, and that needs to go into the record as well. Okay.
Was that in favor, for, or against?
That was in favor of. Okay. All right, I'm going to open it up to the public. I'm going to ask that people that want to speak just actually kind of come up one by one, and then as we get towards the end, we'll do this sort of town meeting style, so if you could just line up and start going, that'd be great. And yes, we're going to, sorry, as April points out, we're going to keep this to 3 minutes or less because there's a lot of people here tonight. Thank you.
Sure thing. Thank you, Brian. My name's Tony Farrington. I live at 114 Audubon Road, and I prepared some very brief remarks. I'd like to go on record as saying that I strongly support this development. I'd like to thank Keith Schleicher and Kevin Hardy for their strong leadership. They've organized a robust grassroots effort to advocate for development that makes sense for the town of Milton. I grew up here in town. I grew up in Precinct 2, just off of Central Ave, and there was very little on this side of town as compared to East Milton in the way of a place to go, to shop, that sort of thing. We had the Chino's, we had the Town Deli, we had Brewster's, and we had the Food Mart. And now, over the last 20 years, we have Steel and Rye, we have The Plate, we have the Coffee Break Cafe, and Esprit du Vin. Milton has demonstrated, via the success of these businesses, that it can incorporate positive change and smart development and continue to thrive as a community. I am mindful of the Blue Hills Parkway's status on the National Register of Historic Places, and I'm not unsympathetic to the concerns of those who oppose the project. With any new development comes risk. There's an increase in noise, in traffic volume, and slight modifications to the landscape of a thoroughfare that hasn't changed in generations. But along with that, a project like this has the potential to bring people together. It has the potential to foster community, positively enrich a neighborhood, and add, however modestly, to the commercial tax base in this town that is woefully lacking, and I think that's something that everyone can agree upon. Change is hard. I understand that. It runs counter to human nature, and people are naturally resistant to it. But I think that if we work together to identify and mitigate the drawbacks, if we put faith in this planning board, which we've elected based on their good judgment, if we put faith in our selectmen, and most importantly, if we trust ourselves to help guide this project to its fullest potential, I think it'll be a roaring success. And I believe firmly that Milton is too good to let it fail. So I would strongly urge this board to recommend this project and that it move forward. Thank you.
Don't be shy. Look, miss, just get in line with each other, yep.
Thank you. I'm Jeff Stone. I live on Loughbury Street. That's off of Lafayette Street. Lafayette is a cul-de-sac down leading to Pope's Pond, the footbridge, and then the Ice House development area. So I've lived in this area for over 50 years, off and on, but mostly on, and walked and biked that area for all those years. I'm a co-chair, co-founder of Pope's Pond Neighborhood Association. As such, my fellow members and I did some major cleanups 5, 6, 7 years ago, pulling out hundreds of pounds of debris and metal and tires and a sofa. So we've put some blood, sweat, and tears into cleaning up this area. We care about it. I say that because I'm strongly in favor, just like the previous gentleman, of building a mixed-use development of the type that we are proposing, the type that April worked on, that the board has worked on, and that the owner has submitted. I know there's some difference, but I think that both are good. We've heard the term extreme vetting used a lot in recent months. I won't say this has been extreme vetted, but you know, with all the stipulations, I'm sort of surprised that McKean and Ned are even willing to go along with everything else. I think we're going to have the best designed small development that we've had in Milton if we approve this. I think that it will improve the ambiance of the parkway. I love Blue Hills Parkway. It's a unique road. As I said, I've walked, jogged, ridden my bike, etc. for decades. I want it to stay beautiful. I think this will bring needed positive attention and caring from the community to this area, to the parkway, as well as connecting it to the beauty of Pope's Pond. And I think more people, not just me and my local neighbors, should know about Pope's Pond. I think it should be more like Turner's Pond, where a lot of people know that this beautiful area exists. And I don't think the extra foot traffic is going to be so dramatic that it's going to harm the, you know, the conservation area and the natural nature of it. So I guess in concluding, I very much want to see, for me it's essential to see a coffee place, a cafe, a meeting place. I think this town really needs an opportunity, as the gentleman before me alluded to, for people to meet, get together, mingle with their neighbors on our side of town. And a ways away is Tedeschi's, formerly Brewster's, but that's too far. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about my side of town around Pope's Pond. There's nothing, obviously. And a small market, and the other kinds of, I'm 16 and 16 is okay with me, Ned. 16 units and 16,000. It's not huge. It's just not huge. I don't think the traffic is going to be a huge impact. I have confidence in the skill of the planning board and the rest of our bodies. I thank you, by the way, for all your volunteer effort over the years. This Milton's warrant committee and the planning board, you know, you deserve all the applause you get at town meeting. I applaud you right here. So I'm staunchly in favor. Thank you.
Well done. 3 minutes. Next. Ms. McSweeney.
Hello again. I'm Annetta Murphy, 250 Blue Hills Parkway. Again, we're here to discuss the revision of the development plan for 487 Blue Hills Parkway that has been sent as a placeholder on the warrant. We appreciate the efforts of the planning board to construct a mixed-use commercial development for the site, which is somewhat smaller in scale than those presented in the recent past. But again, as in the past, the pressure to construct zoning under the constraints of preserving a historic parkway and surrounding conservation land and wetlands is difficult at its best. Proper language and setbacks from these structures must be included to ensure that there is no future compromise of them, even if unintentional. It is not sufficient to state that the site shall be planned and designed so as to preserve the character of the parkway. It is imperative to state that the development shall require no physical alterations to the parkway to facilitate the flow of traffic in and out of the site. It is also imperative that the setbacks from the wetlands on the north side of the property be in alignment with state regulations. The impact of even a small-scale market on parking, trash, and safe traffic flow is complex and challenging. Parking adjacent to the development on the parkway should be prohibited so as to facilitate traffic flow and safety of bicyclists. The number of dumpsters needed is difficult to estimate, but the state law must include those specifically allocated for organic material. This may prove to be a wonderful source of food for the neighboring creatures who are settled in the conservation land. The impact on traffic flow is especially challenging, not only for cars and bicycles, but also for the service vehicles, both small and large. It must be remembered that the Blue Hills Reservation and the Parkway are truck-free zones. I cannot envision how this can be orchestrated without compromising the Parkway and the surrounding community. The inclusions of a bank with 24-hour ATM service can only cause security problems in this relatively remote location. All of this being said, the board has found at its last two meetings that a market development at this site is not appropriate. Why do you think that this proposal is any better and deserves serious consideration? This small property is very special, being surrounded by conservation land on three sides. There has never been a high-impact, traffic-dependent retail commercial use at this site.
Ms. Murphy, that was 3 minutes, so wrap up. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
it certainly puts the historic parkway at risk for changes that threaten to destroy its integrity. A commercial development on the site does not fit the town's master plan for top priorities of preservation of rural and residential character. The resultant change in zoning from residential to full commercial is unprecedented in this town. It will only serve well a potential developer and the homeowner. Under the present zoning, if the development of the site cannot be of similar scale and burden to what is present, it should revert to strictly residential use. In response to those that feel that there is a need of commercial development in Milton, the master plan notes, and I have this in quotes, the argument that such changes would result in a net increase in municipal revenues has not been borne out by studies of the ratio of potential tax income to the increased costs that would probably be required of the community. Thank you for listening to me
Thank you.
again.
I'm going to be very brief. Margaret Carroll's 19 Gibbon Street. Can I ask questions? A couple
Sure.
questions? Ned, can you describe how the 16,000 square foot footprint, if that's the right word, would
Just address questions to the board,
would
and then we'll direct
compare
them back to.
to the buildings that are there right now?
Can you ask all your questions at the same time?
Okay,
and then I'll have Mr. Corcoran
and
answer
then
them.
to April, how would your, the square footage of 12,000 square feet compare with the buildings that are there now?
Do you have any other comments?
I'm very much in favor of mixed-use development there. It's hard to, I know we have to balance it with what a developer would find profitable area, so it's very hard for me to say. I think it's something that a lot of the neighbors want, for a lot of the reasons that were stated before and in my letter that you kindly read. I think that's all I have to say.
Okay, thanks. I'll let April and Ned answer respectively.
I think Ned can just tell us the total footprint.
Yeah, that would be helpful. You're right.
I'm looking for it.
I'm going to ask you to, I'm going to have someone come up next, and then Ned can answer the question. We're going to keep moving this along. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you. I'm just going on record. I'm Megan Prendergast. I live on Warren Ave. I am in support of the ice house. It sounds like something's going in there, either the housing or the commercial, right? That's a done deal. So if that's the case, I would prefer some commercial base on our side of town. Just tonight at Tedeschi's, ran into a neighbor. I'm like, it would be lovely to see you somewhere else other than at the corner store. So I give it a thumbs up. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian, do you think you should clarify that to people that don't honestly understand that is an absolute?
Yeah, I mean, there is no absolute, right? So that's a good point.
I think some people might assume that, as the case was made, that's the truth.
There's no application, to Mike's point, there's no application before us for any development here.
And there's no
Nothing's
40B
absolute.
application.
And there's no 40B application pending, correct. Yes, sir, thank
My
you.
name is Ravi Jain. I live on 53 Crown Street with my wife and 3 small, beautiful children. And I regret that I've not been able to take part in these, the discussions that have been going on. I want to thank everyone that has obviously contributed to a proposal that seems to be taking into account a lot of diverse and different opinions. I do just want to come here tonight to publicly state my approval for mixed-use development. I do feel it's something that's significantly lacking from this part of Milton, and I just wanted to briefly state my traffic concerns, and my traffic concerns are, and similar to Ned, I do all the cooking, and I'm often driving to East Milton, and the concerns are about the traffic that I currently cause throughout Milton as I'm driving down Warren Ave and down Pleasant Street and going back and forth throughout the town. And so I welcome something that's closer, something that I don't even have to drive to, that I can walk to, that I can bike to, and alleviate some of the concern, my own traffic footprint that I put upon. So I thank everyone's time and effort put into this, and again, I strongly support the development of some sort of mixed use. I will say this to one-bedroom studio, that sounds great, addressing concerns about flooding the schools. So again, it just seems like people have been really involved. I wish I could be more involved, but I'm starting tonight, so thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lauren Barone, and I live at 12 Darby Road, and I am very much for the mixed use of that property. I think it will be very advantageous to the neighborhood, and I can't overestimate the taxing of the schools. I think that apartments being put there would put upon our schools. They're already overcrowded, and right now with the budget constraints, and I won't even get into that, but I just think that the mixed use would be a much better use of that property. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Sheila Varela, 70 Lyman Road, town meeting member and precinct 8 and a school committee member. I'm here just to voice my approval for the rezoning and the mixed use, and just a couple of reasons why. I have been a town meeting member for 13 years now and have seen time and time again when we've had the ability to have smart commercial tax-based growth in the town happen, and it's constantly voted down. And by many members that have come up today and emailed as well, you know, people are frustrated and tired of all our payments coming out of our property taxes. So the only other way, you know, the only way you do that is with smart commercial increase in our tax base. So it's not rocket science. It's like one or the other. And so I don't know why. And the other problem is that we don't have, we all know, many places and opportunities for this to happen. We're not like living down by Gillette Stadium in Franklin and farmland where there's just tons of places to build. We have very few opportunities we're going to be able to put in smart commercial tax base. So I really would love to see that happen in this area. I'm hoping, I commend the board for all the work that you've done, and I would hope that the McKean family's needs and you working with them can be worked out, that this can go to town meeting and be voted on and debated at town meeting to give it a wider audience and a voice to speak to. So I hope that this can be worked out, because it would be a shame to yet again have another opportunity after 15 years of nothing innovative and positive in a smart commercial way being developed in this town. And lastly, as a school committee member, we have been vigorously tracking enrollment, and it is skyrocketing without another building of anywhere from 60 to 80 units. We are already up a third in our kindergarten enrollment in January, and it hasn't even been the rest of the year go out. We're up a third in our enrollment in general. Those parents that are maybe watching or here know their classroom sizes are increasing. People are having 3 and 4 kids now. It is what it is. That's okay. We can't tell them not to have 4 children. So we have to take them in. But, you know, if you don't have smart commercial growth, then it's out of your property taxes. And it's nobody likes, you know, overrides. I feel we need a little bit of both. But then it's all in the override, and it's all a larger tax increase. So it's one or the other. So I really hope that this can work, and that you hear the voice of the town, that people want another avenue for taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I can't make it stop.
Oh, do I get the
Okay,
extra time?
go ahead.
Hi, I'm Paul Cicchello. I live on Chilton Park, and I put in already, so maybe this is double dipping. I don't know if this is loud. But my wife and I are relatively new here. For most people, that means they've been here about 30 years, but we've only been here about 3 years, so we are relatively new. And we are downright excited about the possibility of this. You know, I put in my comments about the tax base and everything else, but we're going to be able to walk to this place. And that was one of the big drawbacks when we were looking for places to live. As it happens, having a brother 2 blocks away when you have kids wins, right? And we've loved everything about Milton since we've gotten here and discovered it. But what we miss from other places is just the ability to walk somewhere. And I think people are missing out on that aspect, that this is really going to be a quite positive thing. And for the Blue Hills, like one more thing that I can, you know, that get people in the gateway to the Blue Hills, they have another place to go on their way out of the hike or the way, you know, the way out. So I think it's a very exciting thing. And I also, like everybody else, wanted to really thank you all. This is the first time I've ever been to one of these meetings. I think they're really boring. I think you all do a great job. Even though I was here on the Super Bowl or the big one or whatever, I think you do an amazing job, and I really appreciate what you're doing for the community.
We'll work on our entertainment value.
Hi, I'm Linda Farwell, 161 Audubon Road, and I just want to go on record as saying that I fully support the Ice House project, and I appreciate all that you guys are doing in considering the rezoning, and that although the smaller size may not equal what Mr. Cochran and the McKeans want, I think the thing I would like to have you consider is what the advantage that it would have to our neighborhood, and the less impact it would have on the school systems versus if it's not a mixed-use development, then it would be probably sold off to a larger development. So thank you for your work and hopefully support of changing the zoning to mixed use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Doug Hine. I live at 453 Elliott Street in Milton. Thank you for everybody on the planning board, Mr. Chairman, and especially Ms. Lamro, for their efforts here today. I've listened to all sides, and I've read certain things online about the pros and cons of this. I think I hear a lot of support tonight for a mixed-use property. I'm certainly in that camp. I heard from Mr. Corcoran that some concern about the size of it. You know, kind of when people say 10,000 square feet or 12,000 or 16,000, I think there's a tendency to think the bigger the number and kind of inflate it in our mind, and all of a sudden a 16,000 square foot building is IKEA, which I don't think is really the case. We all know how big a Dunkin' Donuts is, or a Citizens Bank, or frankly a market along the lines of the Fruit Center, and these are all things that people want. And so I kind of asked the board to keep that in mind in terms of the actual structures themselves, and not get hung up on the square footage, which I think kind of is, it is what it is, but it can almost sound inflammatory. Make one more point. I think the inclusion of residential property is really smart. I think the fact that it's there, number one, is going to ensure that there's a 24-hour kind of presence in the property. And so I think, you know, if something's going on after hours when the market is closed or whatnot, you're going to have eyes in the area. It's going to alert the local police. And then just finally, I'd say that, you know, I think the point that at some point in time there will be development on this property. I mean, nothing is inevitable in terms of next week or next year, but at some point in time there will be development. You know, the Henry's property is, I think, a pretty good indication that that's true. Let's not go down that road again. Let's not do that and spend all the years and times, and hopefully these meetings will be able to end before 10 o'clock for you folks if we can agree on this proposal. So thank you again.
Thank you.
You don't even have to start your timer. Elizabeth Baldwin, 39 Winthrop Street. I just want to voice my support of the mixed-use development.
Thank you.
Hi, Melanie Mitchell, 10 Pagoda Street. I do support the mixed-use development. I do ask that the board not get hung up on specific details like some of the other people mentioned. As far as size, because my concern would be we might lose an opportunity to have this development. So I'd be, you know, I'm all for the mixed-use development. So I appreciate all the details that you put in, April, and I wish that we could have it planned like that. But what I'm hearing is that not every, the developer might not go for something like that. So I just, you know, voice my concern over that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe Sloan from 55 Concord Avenue. Speaking directly to the zoning, I want to preface by saying that I do support the board putting forward April Lamoureux's rewriting of this, but and I gave Tim earlier tonight. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time or the technology to redline. Maybe you could just pass that up. Just a small number of additional comments that I would ask you to consider for this draft. A couple of things are places where the language contradicts itself, and I would want to point that out before you would put it forward. But before I asked you to look at those specific comments, I would just I would just ask you, Mr. Chairman, to give consideration to the fact that you did, before accepting public comment, allow Mr. Corrigan to make a presentation before us. I believe that this part of the public hearing would be the part, as you explained, for the public to be giving input to the board. And I think it, I think it speaks in fairness to people who might be in the audience, who might be a little bit reluctant to speak or might have concerns, that the board provide a safe environment for people to be able to sit at this table and feel comfortable about presenting at this table to the board after the presentation time that you allowed for Mr. Corcoran.
I'm going to pause the timer for a minute and just address that for a second. This is an application that's been made, you know, clearly this is not an application, but the zoning, the way we do zoning in this town is on a per application basis, essentially. I would disagree with you that Mr. Corcoran shouldn't have had an opportunity to present.
Oh, I didn't.
So, I would just that's all I wanted to say. I think if the public doesn't feel like this is a safe environment, I think all four of us up here will tell you it's a very safe environment, and we've been very welcoming of negative comments and and positive comments over the last many weeks. So I just want to make that statement.
I understand,
we don't have to discuss
and I know
it
that from having been at previous meetings, but thank you for noting the point. very quickly, the comments that I had put forward were specifically addressing, in a couple of instances, just some places where the language, as we read this draft, prompt a question that could use some clarification. We might start with the first one, where in one sentence of Section 2 of the zoning, it states that the market would be selling, and it lists a number of items, and it says non-alcoholic beverages, but then a sentence later, it says that the market would sell high-quality beer and wine. So I
And also.
would ask.
The word also.
Right.
Is that the clarification that
That's
would
the
say also?
clarification,
So it would be non-alcoholic beverages and.
Plus alcoholic.
Thank you for the.
Well, hold on. No, I'm going to actually make it a little bit more of a distinction. The distinction of saying non-alcoholic beverages and then high-quality wines and beers would suggest that you couldn't have a bucket of nips sitting at the counter, because I think that could be argued that that's not a high-quality wine or beer. So that's the distinction, is I think we're trying to say you can have non-alcoholic beverages and high-quality wine and beer. So we're trying to make sure that it's not just a blanket allowance of alcoholic beverages.
Thank you, because I think there was some confusion on
Understood.
that. A question has also arisen, and it was touched on earlier tonight by a couple of speakers, wondering if the board could explain how, for instance, under the description of the definition of a coffee shop, how this zoning would in fact give the planning board the permission to deny the request of, let's say, a Dunkin' Donuts or a Subway shop or something like that.
So this actually came up in one of the letters as well. Would this permit run to businesses or would it run to the land? The permit runs to the land. So assuming a business was deemed to meet the qualifications of a coffee shop or a retail store or whatever the other qualifications were, whatever the other uses are that are in here, the board has no discretion over that. They're allowed.
It could possibly be an applicant that could be considered under the language here that.
I would say so. yeah.
Okay. I had just a language about prohibited businesses on the site.
Okay.
The term that was used was repair shop, and I was looking for clarification if the intent there was to mean a motor vehicle repair shop or something compared to any other repair shop, a bicycle repair shop or something like that. If the intent was for it to be a motor vehicle thing, I think maybe we would say that specifically.
April, is that what your intent was?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should qualify that. I think it's a great point. I mean, the bicycle repair shop would certainly be a desired use here, so I think that's a great point. We can.
Thank you. The observation of section 2 on page 2, again, sentence structure in this point, I'll quote it, drive-through facilities and restaurant uses above and beyond the coffee shop expressly permitted above shall not be allowed. I think what the intent there may have been was to permit those, was to prohibit those things separately and not together, because I could read this to understand that except for the permitting of a drive-through coffee shop, it wouldn't be allowed. So
Agree.
can we separate that
Yep.
sentence so
We'll
that
fix-
we can close that possibility of an applicant for a drive-through coffee shop there?
We'll fix that. That's a good point.
Thank you.
Restaurant uses above and beyond the coffee
So
shop.
additionally, drive-through facilities are.
Prohibited, period.
Prohibited, period.
Capital R in restaurant.
I delete. Restaurant uses above and beyond the coffee shop expressly permitted above shall not be allowed.
Does that work?
Okay, I had on, in section 6 on page 4, a suggestion to just strengthen the language about, as April said, the protection of the parkway. And I've suggested that the addition of words at the end of that paragraph, that the site shall be planned so to work within the existing parameters of the parkway design. that suggestion has been made just in terms of trying to tighten up the language or the intent so that going forward, the interpretation of what the character might be could have some variability. So I think it speaks to the parkway as it is designed. And then, as April said, as in many aspects of this, if a developer chooses to make an application to another administrative body, they would have that ability. The point about dumpsters and recycling containers was already addressed earlier, but I think that's an important thing. We see a lot of material in addition to dumpsters behind facilities like the fruit center. The state law requires that the food material, organic material, be in separate containers, and that's pretty significant at some of these establishments.
So Tim, I would propose we actually not use the word dumpster since it's technically a brand name, and call it trash recycling, and other similar or other like kind, comparable receptacles. That's how we change that language.
Is that in section
Looks like
11?
it's page 6, section 11.
Yeah, it's not 6 anymore.
That's fine.
So this is the sentence, dumpsters shall
Yeah.
be screened
So
from.
instead of dumpsters, this should say, to April, sorry for taking over here, but
No,
I would
that's
say
fine.
trash, recycling, and other similar receptacles shall be screened, and then, so that would be the change. That cover what you're talking about?
And then the last comment that I had, and again, I'm sure that in a red line format, it would be easier for you to understand, but I didn't have the ability to do that. But the point of my suggestion is to take this language, which I very much appreciate having been added to the zoning about traffic safety and circulation, and I think that the language in some ways is as circular as the traffic patterns on the parkway. And I've just made suggestions to just keep the point, keep the intent of it, and just eliminate some of the language so it would read as I put in the bottom, and just take some of that reference to circular patterns and focus that a little bit more.
So let us take page 4, section 6 on your notes, and this deleted highlight section
Yes.
under advisement for our discussion?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Very well.
Thank you.
And again, thank you for the opportunities all through this process to accept these suggestions and comments to try to streamline it. And I do recommend that the board put forward April's version of this because it really does address some of the concerns that were so tumultuous at last week's meeting about the board feeling like it had somehow not succeeded in this process or had lost the control over the planning process. And I think it's very important to put something forward that is really something that the planning board feels very strongly about being able to keep control of it, at least for this step of the way. And as it goes forward, it will do however well it does as it goes forward. But I think this is really a good opportunity and a good, people were very confused at the end of the last meeting, just as many board members were, about sort of where we are and how to do this. And I appreciate the effort that April and Alex put in to fine tune this during the week. Thank you very much.
Yep, no problem. And just to go back to Mr. Sloan's comment as the next speaker comes up at the beginning, it's the board's discretion to allow more time, and on these particular situations, Mr. Corcoran had some important points he needed to make. Ms. Murphy's been here at every single meeting, so certainly she was entitled to some additional time, and Mr. Sloan had some great feedback here. So, the 3 minutes is really a guide so that we don't sit here until 2 o'clock in the morning.
We're going to sit here till 10, so.
So let's keep moving.
I appreciate the consideration. Thank you.
Change the heading in section 11.
What's that?
Heading, section 11. And the dumpsters is in the heading.
Oh, instead of dumpsters, it should say receptacles. Or waste management.
How you doing? Joe Modugno, 248 Blue Hills Parkway. Just a point of clarification for me, do we have 2 proposals on the table now, or?
No.
So we're talking to your proposal, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, everything I know about the democratic process and deliberations, it all comes down to the art of compromise. I think, April presented a reasonable compromise, considering all the issues, as Joe said just now, and another 2. it gives a little bit of something to everybody. Our concern has been the parkway, protections to the parkway in particular. Zoning is still an issue, the zoning change. But, I'm willing to support April's proposal because I think that proposal provides control for the board, protects the parkway, if I'm reading it right, better, and I'm hoping you can maybe give me a little feedback on that. And I'd ask those who are in this room who support mixed development, and there's a lot of people who said they're for mixed development, that idea. I was against mixed development. I've kind of come around because of the realities to think about mixed development. That's a compromise on my part. I'm willing to meet people halfway on this proposal. I hope these people could consider something smaller in scale. And I asked the McKeans as well as Ned to consider compromise as part of the process, the democratic process here. This board's worked hard. We've all been really kind of, drilling down into details, presenting a lot of information. There's genuine concerns. I think in the end, it's worthy to consider that we can all get a little bit of something here that's going to work. We might have to get a little less rather than a little more. So I'm willing to accept a little more. I'm hoping these other folks are willing to accept a little less. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Katie Schmidt, 62 Churchill Street, Precinct 1. And I would like to, all the people who had the white signs still here, because I think it's great that people are present. I think it's great that they're participating. I'm not somebody who's opposed to mixed use, opposed to commercial on the Parkway. I want to go through, though, I went through the 2 football fields. I want to quickly go through for you as the planning board. I took the 200, you have, the property is like about 200 on the front and 400 back. And if you take this section that's 25 offset on the south side, and you take the 10 feet on the north side, plus you'll have to have about 30 for the driveway and about 10 for the sidewalk, you have then 25 and 50. So you have 75 from 200 is about 125. So you could put that building there, the commercial building, 100 by 120, and that would be your 12,000 square feet. Then I worked in, thanks to you, Tim, from your drawings that you had before, I worked in aisles that would go between parking that the cars abutted each other, and went with the 8.5 by the 12. And I got in 2 rows that were, that would have been 13 and 30, 26. Then you could get another set of rows that were a little bit shorter because that property is shaped a little bit wider at the back. So I could get 50 parking spaces in there. Then I moved back, and I don't know where a planner would do this, but I put the residential property in the back because I was trying to add up the square footage and see what fit into 2 acres. And I put it in the back, and it fit there, and you could put their parking on each side of that. And I thought, well, it looks like it might actually fit, even though you've used 75% of the 2 football fields for the outside of it. But what had been forgotten was the 2,500 square feet that you need to have for loading and service. I thought, and you have to have those, these were one-ways that came in, so you have to have your trucks be able to turn around and back in and load. And if you put if you put the cafe and the bank on one side of the 12,000 square foot building, then you lose, that's 4,000. Then you have 8,000 left, and you have to give 2,000 of that to the loading. You only end up with 600 square feet for the food mart, which isn't small, which is a good size for a food mart, but it barely fits into that. And if we want to have the contours that you're talking about, April, the size and the width of the building, then we're going to have a smaller food mart that's in there in order to have a cafe, in order to have a bank, in order to have the housing in the back. And I didn't even think about handicapped. I didn't think about what are you going to do with the carts. I didn't think about the snow. So it's a recommendation I would make for a change for that.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir, come forward.
Hi, I'm Colleen McCarthy. You don't have to sign me. 60 Gulliver Street. My husband and I moved here from South Boston a couple of years ago. I think a lot of young families are moving to Milton from Boston. And, you know, when I hear the option too about the 64 units of development, that's probably the single number one reason why we left there. So the idea of commercial, place to walk with my kids is fantastic, especially given how the weather has been lately. I'd love nothing more than to, instead of, you know, throwing them in my car, to be able to walk to this commercial space. So I'm in support of the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Come forward.
Good evening. I've been here before. My name is Stefano Keel. I go by Steve. I'm a town meeting member. I live at 62 Churchill Street in Milton. I'm a former member of the Warrant Committee where I served for about 4 years, so I have a fairly good idea of how the town's finances operate. Before I actually talk about some of the points I made, I just want to thank you for the time and the energy that you've invested in this whole process. I know you're really well paid by the town to do this. So I really appreciate the efforts that you've made, and particularly, April, the effort that you made to rewrite this so that it could really fit within the actual scope of the area. I'm also a heavy user of the Parkway. I run on that Parkway, I ride bikes on that Parkway, I walk my dog on that Parkway. I've been doing that for many years. I've lived in Milton for about 33 years, actually 36 years. I've lived on Churchill Street 33, so I'm not very far from the proposed project right now. I've been a part of this process. I've been a participant in it since I found out about the Ice House project in 2016. I never saw or was asked to sign a petition that I've heard about at that time supporting the Ice House, but I was initially neutral. I was unopposed. I was actually supportive of the project as I heard about it. And I think it's important to reiterate that. I think I said it once before. I've read the posted versions of the proposed article to date. I've seen the different iterations as we've gone by. And what I'd like to do is just note a number of concerns. One is the initial proposal has changed, I think, rather dramatically. What I heard in 2016 in terms of the original proposal was something that was much less dense. Apparently, it was financially feasible at that time. Apparently, it's no longer financially feasible. I'm not sure why that's the case. The density has grown significantly to the point where I just feel it's a real issue for the given space that we have, particularly around the issues of parking. I don't think there will be enough parking for both the intended 16,000-foot market in particular. And I know we're talking about what you wrote, but I heard what Ned said in terms of 16,000. I thought it would be tight with what you proposed, April. I can't even envision what it would be like with 16,000 feet. I also can't understand what you do with overflow parking. And if this is successful, I would imagine there's going to be overflow parking. I still don't understand where that would go or how you would deal with it. I also do a lot of the cooking in my house, and I go to the fruit center quite a lot. I have had a hell of a time finding parking at the fruit center on any number of occasions, let me tell you. I was just there for lunch this afternoon at the Plate, and what struck me was it's busier in the parking lot than I've ever seen it before. That worries me in terms of what could be taking place down the street. Traffic remains a major concern, particularly because everything that has been written and mentioned about traffic, I think, is really significant. But the control you actually have in terms of the DCR-controlled part of the parkway, you don't have that control. That's up to the DCR. We all know that the high school was not successful in terms of getting a cut-through to have vehicles turn around. People have to go down and they have to do another turn. I'm not sure why it would be more successful now for a business. I'm I'm glad to hear that the cafe is back and the conservation access has been eliminated. I think that that's really important to the project. I'm very concerned that people familiar with the earlier versions of the Ice House article proposal are not familiar with the current iteration or version. I say that because my sister-in-law was a person who signed the original petition that circulated. She was aware of the original petition, but she called us somewhat frantically this afternoon saying that she had received an email stating that there were two options, option 1 and option 2. You either go for the development or you go for the 40B. And she said, what's this about? I thought we were going to have a cafe and some market that was going to be roughly this size. And we explained to her, no, it's actually significantly different from that. She was not aware of the iterations that had happened in the interim. And that's a concern. Do people really know anymore, or do many people really know anymore what they are in fact participating in?
So you have 4 minutes.
Thank you. I'm almost done. Getting signatures is not that difficult to do. I've been part of a process where I've done it in the past. I'm picking up from the discussions occurring this evening. I may be doing some more of this in the future. And I haven't been involved yet in terms of some of the issues that are being discussed. The DPW development years ago is probably a really good example of some of the development that's been tried and failed in the town. When I think back to that, it occurs to me that it would have been very difficult. It would have been actually very easy, to have gotten a considerable number of signatures in support of that development. I probably could have gotten 500, 1,000 signatures. It didn't make it right that I got those signatures. The development didn't go forward for any number of issues, particularly related to the people who lived around the area. Commercial development for this particular parcel of land may be in the best financial interest of the owner, but it is not in the best interest of the neighborhood, the residents, or those who use the parkway. There is no other road like the parkway in Milton. You've heard me say that before. But as we consider amenities, we should especially consider that the parkway is probably one of our greatest amenities. Cafes are important. Being able to go out and physically exercise and walk and ride and run are extremely important also. And this project is simply, especially as being most recently decided with a 16,000 square foot market, is simply too dense for the space. Thank you.
Thank you. Before anyone else comes forward, I know Mr. Whiteside's going to want to make a motion to end the meeting in a few minutes. So if we're going to have that motion, I just want the board to know that we're going to have another meeting next week so we can present to warrant committee the following week. So what's your pleasure?
My pleasure is that we've heard a great deal from the public. I am prepared to deliberate, but I'm not going to sit through an hour of further testimony. If we need to have another meeting, let's have another meeting. If we're ready to deliberate, we can deliberate. And I think it's basically up to the people here what
That's
they
fine.
want.
I think that's a reasonable compromise. So could I get a show of hands who else intends to speak tonight? We have 2 more people. We'll hear them and be done.
Let's hear them and we're done.
Sounds good. All right, sir, you're up.
I took notes on my phone, so that's what I'm reading from. My name's Jeff Krasik. I live at 261 Blue Hills Parkway. Thanks, April, for writing that proposal. It looks really good. I just had 2 questions. I was curious where the information on the size of the possible apartment complex was coming from. I guess I'm relatively new to this process and the documentation. My wife in particular was really concerned about that. And I didn't have any answers when she was asking me because she's home with my daughter. And then I was curious, does approving the mixed-use zoning preclude the apartment building or the 60, 80? I don't actually know what they're. I've heard different numbers, and I was curious about that because
No.
I think if you could preclude that, I think people would be even more for.
We'll just answer your question. It does not.
Okay. So like that doesn't.
40B can happen anytime.
But the idea is that it's
or any application.
Financially
you could,
beneficial to have a supermarket, therefore they'll outbid a potential apartment developer or something?
They could submit another application, they could submit another zoning change tomorrow. So
Yeah, so this
is
doesn't-
not an application for a project. This
Right.
is just a proposal for zoning that would allow a particular project, but it doesn't mean this is gonna happen.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll let April answer your question. We actually have to answer the other questions that were asked earlier as well. I forgot about that. Go ahead, Ms. Swenson, and then we'll answer the questions.
Promise to keep it quick.
Yeah, I'm turning the timer on for you.
Penny Swenson, 65 Green Street. I'm a town meeting member on Precinct 5, and I'm trying to keep an open mind all the way up through, deliberations on the floor. And I'll have to vote. So it would be helpful for me to understand and have some answers to some of the Maggie Oldfield questions. The one that jumps out to me as one of her key questions was, would this zoning change apply to other similar properties in town? And, what would this zoning change mean for the rest of our town, not just this property? In other words, a market may or may not be the best thing for this property, but would this open us up to other properties in town that this zoning could apply to? So I'm just looking at any possible unintended consequences and any ways to button those up in the document.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for raising the other questions that were asked as part of the letters. I'll answer as many of those as I can as well.
Don't we have to take a vote
To do what?
if we're going to stay here?
Sure. Yep.
That was the motion, right?
Yep.
A unanimous vote.
Okay, I move that we stay here till 10:30.
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, April. So I'm going to take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Questions? Mr. Corcoran, can you just give us that one answer?
Yeah, so my, is approximate, but there's a 3-story,
Do you know what the square footage is of the existing
that is 8,500 square feet.
footprint?
The footprint's 2,300 square feet.
Okay. So it's a 2,300 square foot footprint totaling about 8,500 square, no, 2,300 square foot footprint.
There's 4 buildings.
Yep.
Total square footage,
Just give us the total footprint and total square footage, please.
total footprint is about 13,000 square feet.
Okay?
Gross floor area is about 18 to 19,000 square feet.
13,000 square foot footprint for the audience, 18,000 square foot total area on the project. That would compare to
18,
so what's yours?
6,000 for the residential and 12 for the commercial maximum footprint. So
18,000 maximum footprint.
Footprint and 22,000 square foot.
18,022 for April. Mr. Corcoran, do you know what yours is? What you're asking for? You're asking for 16 and 6?
plus,
Okay. So his is 6, his is another,
No, it's-
his is another 4, right?
16.
No, 16 plus 16 residential
No,
units.
No,
16
12.
plus 12 times 1,000. 12,000.
So 36,000.
24,000.
24,000.
Oh, 16, okay.
Okay, thank you. That's one question.
24,000 is the total square footage net, or is the footprint?
Footprint is 16,000.
So 16,000 was the commercial.
No. Yeah, and of commercial, and
Commercial.
all the
He
residential is
wants to double
upstairs.
stack one building.
So you 16,000 square foot footprint, and all the apartments are on the second floor. Where's the bank?
Part of the 16,000.
So it's all in one
No,
building?
it's 2 buildings. 2,000 square foot bank, 14,000 square foot market building, apartments on the second floor of the market building.
Okay.
16, so 14,000 square foot market and 2,000 square foot bank and everything else is upstairs?
Yes.
Of the 14, okay. Second question was, what was the basis of the size of the apartments, April? I think we're speaking about bedroom, that number of bedrooms versus
Well, it
size.
says that average size has to be 750 square feet, and to be honest, I'm not really sure what.
Well, the basis of that was to keep the FAR down. I did the 750 square
carried it
feet.
over from a
Yeah,
draft.
so I came up with the 750. I was basing it on the same restrictions that April has, which is the studio 1 and 1 plus bedrooms, and the 750 was based on keeping the project to a certain size. So the apartments were going to have to be, that's an average across the board, so that would include 400 square foot studios and 1,000 square foot one and one plus bedrooms, your average effective size has to be 750.
Now that would discourage children.
The questions from the letters, very quickly. Would the town have, if there was an appeal, would the town have to demonstrate that the zoning was not spot zoning? The answer is yes. Does the business have to apply for their individual special permit? We've already covered that one. No, this would be a permit running to the land. The businesses, if they're allowed by right, would be allowed under the blanket special permit for the overall project. Is the special permit transferable to another business if the original business leaves the site? That's not relevant because it's not running to the business. There are no term limits on this zoning, meaning there is no expiration of the special permit. Should only independents be allowed to operate here? That's not contemplated here. We have not put a restriction on national tenants here.
I don't think that's legal, is it?
It's been challenged, certainly, and I don't remember if it's legal or not. You can try and write it into zoning. But we have not included it here. Why aren't we limiting the activity above a certain level of, I think we are, frankly. 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., will that become a new standard for all retail businesses? No, this is not specific to all commercial areas. All retail businesses in residential districts is the actual question, and the answer is no. This applies to this specific, the specific zoning as it relates to what's required to meet this zoning. And a section on plans, rules, and specifications seems to be missing from this zoning. I think that's just an okay. And we'll take it under advisement. And when is it our responsibility to run the financials on the project? It's not. So I think that answers all of the questions, hopefully. Demi actually asked a slightly more specific question, which was, where else could this happen? And is this only for this site? And I think the answer is...
Somewhere else on the parkway.
Somewhere else on the parkway it could happen. If it meets this criteria, then it could happen somewhere else.
Where it has to border conservation, be at least 2 acres.
Frontage of 200 feet on a state-owned parkway.
Yeah.
One or more non-conforming business uses
Right.
for at
So
least
the answer
30
is
years.
yes, it could apply because we can't spot zone, but
Yes, you can.
fine, we're not going to get into it. I'm going to make you step back from the table in a minute. And so yes, it does apply to other areas, but we don't believe there is one today.
Brian, to that point, and I don't know if this is a good time for this or for deliberations, there were a few references in April's draft to Blue Hills Parkway specifically, and I don't know if that's something that you want to think about.
Why don't we just say state-owned parkway? Easy enough.
For the street on which the frontage is, because I think, whatever, we use street on which the frontage is for the other one, so I don't know which one's better as far as, but I'm happy with either. Either one's
You use what?
street on which the frontage is.
Well, no, but we want it on a parkway, so state-owned parkway
So we should
is the
just
same
do a
thing
fine
as
and
Blue Hills Parkway.
So we should do a find and replace all on that. Okay.
Could you clarify that? That means that it could, two other homeowners could sell their property, and then this zoning could apply for them to do commercial?
If they have a business in their house.
I'll take the question. It's only for existing non-conforming lots. There has to already be a business there. This wouldn't apply to merging two existing residential properties. You're welcome. Applies to non-conforming only.
Just, do you have the square footage and the footprint of the current property, the McKean property?
Yeah, we gave that at the beginning.
13,000.
Total square footage of the property, 89,250.
Oh, total square footage of the property. I thought you did give that. So what's the footprint?
The land is 89,250 square feet. It's 255 by 350.
Okay.
What's the footprint?
Footprint current of the building.
Folks, I'm going to cut this off. We're
13,000.
not doing this. We have to get to deliberations. We're out of public comment. Okay. Who wants to speak?
Well, I'd like to speak. I told you it sounded like April threaded the needle. I thought that Ned did a very aggressive presentation saying that if you don't give us what we want, we're going to go and cram a 40B development down your throat, which I thought was entirely inappropriate. but maybe they will. It doesn't, I don't think that's the way to go about it, but so be it. I have a suggestion. He says he wants some more square footage. What I really got, he said he was negotiating with a market of 12,500 square feet. Now, I don't want to foreclose that. So what I'd like to do, April, and of course,
others,
we all have to agree, would be to, in number 2, development components, have the market be between 8,000 and 12,500 square feet. And then when you go down to the 4th line from the bottom where it says other retail uses, say other retail use, put in other retail uses plural, up to a combined total of, and then you'd say the square footage of the market plus 4,000 square feet.
That's more.
What?
It is more.
That's 16,000 square feet. Yeah.
So,
It would be, unless it's a smaller market.
No, you meant 12,500 square foot plus 2,000 more.
No, well, it would go up to 16.5, that's right, if it was a 12,500 square foot market, but if it were an 8,000 square foot market, it would go to 12.
So I just want to respond to this because I have written down here that I'd like to do a 12,500 square foot market as an amendment. I said up to 14, but I'm happy to go up to 16, frankly. And the logic I have behind this, in addition to me not wanting to foreclose a 12,500 square foot market, is much the same logic that we used a few minutes ago, or a few hours ago now, on the Carberry property. If we go to town meeting, we can't go up. And if there's a logical and good argument to go from 10 to 12.5 or from 14 to 16 at town meeting, and that's the only thing precluding this project, we can't go up. But if we're at 12.5 and 16 and town meeting, and frankly, this planning board, if they want to make a recommendation up till the night of town meeting that we reduce it to 14, we can do that. But once we submit this to the warrant at whatever's in here, 8 to 10 up to the 12,000, that's what we've got. So, based on the fact that we're hearing there's a 12,500 square foot market, and the fact that we can't scope up, but we can scope down at town meeting, I'd be very supportive of what Alex just said.
I don't see things going down. There's no motive. If you tell
town
me,
meeting could scope it down.
I understand that. But when the proponent comes and he says X, and you give it to him, it ain't going down. But I'm a little confused because unless I am confused and I misunderstood things. The last meeting we all said this was too much, and the proponent said, "Oh, if it's just the square footage, we can work with that." It was very positive. And like one of the people that come up earlier said, the earlier version worked with much less square footage. Last week, the proponent sat in front of us and said, "Oh, he can work with the square footage if that was straightened out." The only thing I can conclude from the presentation and everything is he figured, in a negotiating sense, I got a real good threat here. So screw it, I'm going to go with the full, what I asked for the first time. I ain't going to give him an inch, because I could threaten him. What am I misunderstanding here? The proponent sat in front of us and said, I can work with the square footage if that's what it needs to be done, and didn't.
The linchpin is...
Didn't give an inch.
The linchpin is...
I'd like to finish it, Alex.
Okay.
I think another gentleman come up, and I think it is the linchpin in the way things work is a little bit of compromise. We've got no compromise here, zero. A person who told us he was ready to work with some compromise and come back and gave us the exact same numbers.
The linchpin?
Whatever.
The linchpin, as I see it, is the double-decking, it's the shoebox. It's the rectangular building plunked down on the site with a market on the first floor and residential on the second floor. No creativity, just a steel structure with maybe steel siding. Wouldn't be surprised. Get rid of the shoebox, and you can have some creative design. And increasing the square footage, you know, there are constraints. If you can't meet the square footage you're allowed, you're not going to produce it. If you can't make it fit.
If you can't park it,
If you
can't
don't
build
have
it.
the
If you can't park it, you
parking,
can't build it.
you're not going to produce the building.
And I'll tell you from experience, there's lots and lots and lots of zoning bylaws that allow huge amounts of FAR and then say, but if you can't park it, you can't build it,
Well,
and therefore you reduce it by parking. One thing I'd just like to say to Alex's linchpin point. If we go to town, we've heard a lot of people say they want this project, and we've heard some people say they don't. If we go to town meeting with this document and allow town meeting the option to scope it down, I think we have a chance of seeing this project go forward if that's what the town wants, and they will vote on that yes or no at town meeting. If we go with something that the applicant is going to stand up and say, I don't want this, here's what I want, which we've seen before at town meeting is going to vote no to both of them, and they're going to send it back for further study. And maybe that's what we want here, but I don't think it's what the people who are coming here tonight want. I think they want us to put something forward that town meeting can vote on. So that's why we've vetted this. We've done extreme vetting on this, and I think we've come to a great place, and you did a great job. But I think that if we don't allow town meeting the opportunity to scope this down and tell the applicant that we're not giving you more than this, I think they're going to submit a conflicting article.
Isn't town meeting looking for the planning board to tell
That's
them these type
exactly
of
my
things?
so this is my point. The whole reason why I wanted an opportunity, a crack at this thing to try to thread the needle or however we want to describe it, is because I feel like town meeting deserves our guidance. And if we go to them and we say 20,000 square feet sounds fine, if you want to knock it down more, then go right ahead. That's not doing our job. That's the opposite of what I was upset about last week, which was doing nothing. So my perspective is this. I respect the heck out of the people that have been coming to these meetings week after week expressing concerns. They haven't come here, most of them, and said, I don't want to see anything happen here, don't do anything, which is what you hear from a lot of people that are trying to be obstructionist or other things. We've heard from very legitimate concerns from the neighbors saying, I'm concerned about density, I'm concerned about traffic, I'm concerned about protecting conservation areas, all very valid points. I think we've done a nice job, and I keep saying we because it wasn't just me. There was a lot of people that weighed in on this process, including some of them. So to sit here and negotiate again from a perspective, I don't feel like this has moved forward in a very systematic way. With all due respect to Mr. McKean, who I've actually never even spoken to, I apologize for that, but I haven't seen a lot of budging from them moving forward. I've seen, I want this, and that's it. I read the warrant from last February, and there was no maximum square footage for commercial that I could find. It said up to 20 FAR, which could maybe put 17,500 square feet. So I don't know what was contemplated last year. All I'm saying is I think that this strikes a balance. I think there's a lot of protections for the neighborhood. I think it gives us a lot of discretion to say no. If what I'm hearing from you and from them and from other people is that you want to find a way to make this work, I thought 8,000 to 10,000 square foot market was fair. If we need to say 12,000 square foot market, I'm fine with that. If that was the maximum footprint that I was allowing in this article for commercial space, if that's what we want to go with, that's fine. If we want to move it to 12,500, I'm not going to cause a fit over it. But I do think it then requires adjustments, because then we have to require a cafe inside the market. If we want to take out the extra 2,000 square feet in the residential building, that's fine. But then that goes away with their bank. And I know that they keep saying they need this bank, which I don't hear a single person saying they think is a priority for the neighborhood. That's not one person has said that. So, I mean, you have to remember that if we're going to start making these adjustments, it impacts other things.
So what you're hearing from me is 12,500 square feet and 14,000 square feet, a total. Okay?
Sounds good.
So let me finish, okay? And it's not what they want, and it's not what April wants, but it's right in the middle. And it would allow for a 12,500 square foot supermarket, and they can get their cafe in there. If they have to put a cafe in the last 1,500. If they want a bank, they're going to have to figure out how to do a smaller market. But it gets us to a place where, look, I agree with you, April, and I'm going to say it before I vote tonight, and I said it at the last meeting. I don't like zoning like this. I've been saying it for 3 years. To have a systematic process that's going to allow the planning board to make good recommendations to town meeting, we have to be talking about it in a more general way. we have a property owner. For all intents and purposes, this is intended for one property in the town. Of course, it could apply to other properties if you did certain things and you jumped through a bunch of hoops. This is a single property, and the property owner is sitting at the table, and he's saying, go ahead and pass it. It isn't going to happen. I don't know why we're here if we're doing that. So I agree with you. I don't like the way this happens either. But it's Milton, and that's how we do it. So I think we're all coming to the table, and I think we should give town meeting the opportunity to decide whether or not they want the project. And they can watch the tapes if they want our guidance.
People came up, like you commented, and they said they wanted the market, they're proponents, they're for it. Half the positive, and I'm not going to throw around numbers, I won't say half, but a lot of the positive statements that you read, people said within scale.
I agree.
Made some reference
I agree.
to that.
They said small developments. I agree with that.
And like I said, the proponent said he could work with the scale,
Well,
but
last
didn't.
week, he said 8 to 12,000 square foot market. So we put in
I'm-
8 to 10,000 square foot market. Now that doesn't work.
Right.
So that's what
I'm willing to go, if they get a specific, like you said, 12,500 square foot market, and he's looking for another two, I'm willing to go 12.5 and 14.5. But if
Great.
there's no compromise, I'm
There
not
doesn't
going to work under
guys,
threat.
Guys, there doesn't have to be compromise.
No, there doesn't
I'm
have
getting
to
the
be.
thumbs up at
Doesn't
the end
have
of the
to be.
table,
Doesn't have
which
to
is
be.
great. But there doesn't have to be
They're
compromise.
giving you a thumbs up?
They're giving me a thumbs up, so we can probably go home. But I just want to remind everybody, there doesn't have to be compromise.
I
To
agree.
April's point,
Maybe they
we
shouldn't
can set
be
the
at the
zoning.
table.
Well, that's what
But
I'm
just the last point, Brian.
No, they are at the table. but
I
people
agree,
give me
I
the
agree a
thumbs up.
little bit, and
Oh,
I know
no.
this is a point that doesn't necessarily have to be made, but for future, if we go to town meeting and say, here's the zoning, we suggest you drop it 20,000, if I was at town meeting, I'd say, well, why didn't you give us a zoning with 20,000 less?
Right.
And I think that's the job of the person presenting at town meeting for the planning board to explain it and say, this is where we are, and this is what we think, but we want to give you the option to vote for
No,
this.
but I'm going with
So.
what the planning board decides is justified and right. I'm not going to go with what the proponent decides is just and right and try to work away from it.
Well, the nice thing is that we're here tonight and we've got 10 minutes to
8.
determine this thing.
All right.
And I think we should do 12,500 for the market, 14,000 total.
500. I want the 500.
14.5
14.5.
for the total, and whatever the adjustment
have to
to
do to
the
put you in this ice house
25%,
today?
whatever the adjustment to the 25% FAR is, which would be 28%, 30%,
Yeah, probably 30.
just say 30% and call it a night.
And I just want to be clear, though, even though we're making these adjustments, as Katie pointed out, it has to fit within the framework. So what I was going to respond to her comment is, she said, not everything can fit, and I agree. It probably can't all if you just lay it all out there. And it commands some creativity to make it work. So even though we're saying this is the maximum foot, but it may not end up.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It might not fit.
But
You made a very good point. Someone develop may come in and say, these are the rules, this is what I'm doing. Don't work.
Right.
You short 2 parking spaces.
That's what
You
it
didn't leave the
happens.
space between the parking
so
spaces.
there's one more issue that needs to be discussed.
There's
It's in
3 more
Sorry.
because we also have to go through
Well,
Mr.
there's
Sloan's
3.
comment.
Well, this was an important one. It's in section 6, site design standards. It's the sentence that I really liked a lot regarding the National Register of Historic Sites status, that we now, if we're not referring to the Blue Hills Parkway by name, I don't know what that means to this.
Where is it?
Section 6, the very first sentence.
of section 6.
Can we say that in keeping with can we say that the project, whatever we're calling it, will keep with, will
We should just leave Blue Hills Parkway.
honor any historic designations?
Well, or in keeping with the Parkway's historic status. I mean, it is
Yeah, just
nice
take
to
out the Blue
say
Hill.
the National Register, but
Okay.
In keeping
I
with,
suppose it could work that way, April. If you have a parkway that doesn't have historic status, it doesn't
Yeah, I
apply.
guess so.
But if
Right.
you do, it does.
right.
So did you get
we
that?
could
Just
say
take out the word Blue
Parkway
Hills.
with historic status.
All right, and then we've got 2 comments from Mr. Sloan that we did not respond to, and I just want to quickly do it. He took the time to put this together.
I don't mean, I'm sorry to interrupt
Right.
here, but gateway to the Blue Hills Reservation.
What?
Seems there's only one parkway in town that is a gateway to the Blue Hills Reservation. There's 2?
And exactly, and the fact that there might be other sites on the Parkway, even though there aren't,
Okay.
is, so leave the reference, we can leave the reference to the Parkway in both places.
All right, same section. Mr. Sloan is recommending, or suggesting, I'll say suggesting, the addition of the words, "the design and character" in between "preserve" and "of the Parkway" on the last three words.
What part
This
is
is the same section we were just looking at.
Section 6, which paragraph?
The-
Oh, we don't.
What we just talked
Page
about.
4, Section 6 is a red comment.
It's what we were just talking
Oh,
about.
sorry, first sentence.
I don't understand it.
First sentence.
You don't?
No?
I understand it and I like it.
I'm okay with as to preserve the design and character of the Parkway. I don't like the last part.
So I was going
Right,
to say that.
I mean, yeah,
was-
that's the part I don't
My
understand.
concern about no alterations is that there may be positive
Right.
alterations.
I agree. So,
No, let's not do it.
fine. Do we want to add the design and character?
Yes.
Fine. You got 1 out of 2. And on the yellow, the last part is.
I love the yellow. I like the stuff in the yellow. He's taking the guts right out of it. It may cause him to go around in circles, but that's
All right,
the
so-
way it is.
Says the lawyer.
Says the lawyer. I'm going to defer to the lawyer.
So you're
Doesn't have enough
suggesting
words
no
according to the
change?
lawyer.
I suggest no change.
Anybody want to defend it? All right. Sorry, got 1.5, or what, half out of. All right. I think. Would you like to make
So with those few
Mr.
changes,
Motion? Would you like to make a motion? Good luck.
Move that we recommend the slightly reworked article to town meeting.
Did you get the 12,500, 14,500?
No, let's go back and do that
Quickly.
because
You're working with
And
April's
30%.
version, correct?
Yes.
And 30% FAR.
So where are we? Section
Purpose.
2.
Section 2.
Well, section 1 needs to be.
Section
revised
1
also.
needs to be,
Yep.
Purpose, it would be 14,500.
5 instead of 12. Yeah.
Development containing up to 14,500 square feet?
Yes.
Instead of 12?
Yes.
14,500. We just said.
And then,
Did you get that?
Mm-hmm.
Tim?
14,500 square feet of commercial
Yes, right.
space and 1 or
Yeah.
2 buildings on the
And
lot.
Paragraph 2, section 2. 8,000
12,500.
square feet to 12,500 square feet.
At 4 with the slash through, it's not very clear.
No. He's getting 24,500 now.
No, it's not going to be 1 million square feet, people.
Yeah. 124,000, right?
and did you get you've got the
The-
14 a little later on? And then on the next page?
Yeah, it's on your next page.
Wait,
It is.
where's the 14 later on?
I think you have to go to the next page,
Last paragraph.
right there.
Combined total of 14,000 square feet?
500.
500.
14,000.
Getting dangerously close here, folks.
Wes?
I know.
Right.
Yeah. I think
Last
you're right.
paragraph in 2?
Paragraph.
Is there
The
anything
FARs
in
be
this
adjusted
paragraph?
to
That
30%.
third line down, where it says gas station, automotive repair shop.
Oh,
should that be
yeah.
motor vehicle?
Yes.
Yeah, motor vehicle.
Thank you,
auto,
good
right.
catch.
Is that so like
What's
you
wrong with
can't show
all of-
like
oh,
a bike
you think
shop,
that
or a
trucks
motorcycle,
should
ATV?
Did you make the rest of these changes?
Right.
Probably
Well,
not,
we
right?
want to
Yes, you did while we were talking
What?
about
If you didn't, Tim, we'll just incorporate them in as part of the motion.
We want to allow bicycle repair.
FAR is 30%,
Where's the FAR?
last paragraph. Right there.
So that's fine.
30%?
Out.
That's fine, actually, we just did that. Never mind, we're all set.
Market building shall not exceed 14,500.
We already did that.
Market building footprint may not exceed 14,500?
Yes.
So we ready?
Why am I missing this?
So we can finish up.
Just a
Go ahead.
question. April's draft provides for residential and all in one building and not on the second floor above the market. I don't think that's right. I think it needs to be on the second floor of either building.
I don't support that.
What?
He only wants, well, he would like us to reconsider the second-story residential over the market and not in a separate building.
That's
I think you end up
a
with a much
no-go
bigger
for me.
building with 12
I
units.
think you
than
lose
would-
your support.
Yeah.
Just telling you.
What's that?
You lose your support by what I'm seeing, so just letting you know.
Let's see.
I'm going to allow Mr. Whiteside to make a motion.
Well, I made a motion.
do we
I
think
made
we
the
have some,
motion.
As modified?
we
Okay.
think we have some kind of final?
I think so. Do we have?
Oh, okay, the motion
Hang on now, hang on.
is, what?
I just, you don't want the departments over the market.
That's not in there. We don't have that in there.
Okay.
That's
But I'm just saying,
I
would
don't,
that
no.
decrease the whole footprint of the buildings?
It would,
No, it wouldn't. You're right. No, you're fine.
what
Just
you
create
get
a
would be
taller-
just
You're fine.
awful.
You're fine, you're fine.
Okay,
You're fine.
thanks.
I'm
Tim, are
sorry.
you feeling good that you have everything?
I'm feeling
I
feeling
thought
good.
through.
All right.
All right,
Go.
the time has come. I move that we recommend the amended article as we've just come up with to the warrant committee as constituting what we'd like to see as a substitute for the placeholder, and that we recommend that the town meeting adopt it with enthusiasm.
Can we have any opportunity to review it? We're not having a next meeting before.
You can review it again before
No,
town
I mean,
meeting.
the warrant committee, you see, they're going to go to the warrant committee and try and get further changes made.
You're gonna more or less oversee these changes, make sure that
They're done.
it reads the way?
I think they're all done, but
Well,
I'll
we want
double
to see a
check.
finished, clean
will.
copy. I would
will.
like to see a
I will
finished.
We will
double
have an
check.
opportunity between now and town meeting. If we have to tweak something to make it work, we can do that.
I
We
think
can
we
send
can
them a
also
copy
review it
tomorrow.
before you go to warrant
You
committee.
can also review it before you go to warrant committee and call me and tell me if you want me to say something to warrant committee. Or you can come to warrant committee and say it yourself.
But I also, Mike, to your point, will double check, make sure it's within my understanding.
Yeah,
If I have
no,
a
no,
second.
Yes.
I'm not, I'm just, make sure we get what we're
I need a
delegating.
second.
How about seconding the
Second.
motion?
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
4-0.
It's the craziest thing.
Good job. Good
I
job.
move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I thought that's what we did last time.